Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Leigh Matthews. Leigh Matthews was born in 1983 to Rob and Sharon Matthews. Rob was the director of a specialized IT technology company and a prominent businessman in South Africa. In 1999, he began working with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, one of the largest stock exchanges in the world, and a leading IT company in South Africa. Leigh had a close relationship with both of her parents, particularly her mother. They enjoyed activities together, such as going to the gym, visiting beauty salons, and shopping. They especially enjoy scrapbooking and enjoy making and designing photo albums. Leigh was a compassionate and sensitive individual. Following the tragic Columbine massacre, she joined her classmates in sending aid to the victims, showcasing her empathetic nature. During high school, Leigh volunteered at an animal cruelty prevention center, further demonstrating her kindness. Friends described her as quiet and modest, often joking about her shyness and how easily she could blush. After graduating, Leigh chose to pursue a career in finance, inspired by her father's work. On July 9, 2004, Leigh attended classes at the university. She had just turned 21 the day before, on July 8, and celebrated with a dinner at a restaurant with her family and close friends. At the end of the meal, the entire restaurant sang happy birthday to her, which made her so embarrassed that she decided to leave the restaurant. The next day, a birthday party was planned, and after agreeing to meet friends at a club, Leigh headed to the university parking lot. Unfortunately, no one saw her again after that. Around noon, Leigh's father, Rob Matthews, received a call from her phone. However, it was not Leigh on the line. Instead, a man claimed he had kidnapped her. He instructed Rob not to contact the police and demanded a ransom of 350,000 South African rand, approximately $20,000. The kidnapper specified a location south of Johannesburg for delivering the ransom. Rob believed the caller was serious and mentioned that he had successfully carried out similar crimes before. Rob detected a slight accent and believed the kidnapper was from the area. The kidnapper threatened to kill Leigh if Rob the ransom was not paid. At one point, the kidnapper gave the phone to Leigh, and Rob heard her crying and she pleading for her father to meet the demands of the kidnapper. Then the call ended abruptly. Desperate to save their daughter, Rob and Sharon decided to comply. They brought the money to the designated location and waited for further instructions. Unfortunately, every attempt to call Leigh's phone resulted in a message asking them to leave a voicemail. Her phone was turned off, leaving them cut off from both their daughter and the kidnapper and feeling completely hopeless. They chose to contact the police. A dedicated team was formed to find Leigh and ensure her safe return while capturing the kidnapper. Investigators highlighted that wealthy individuals like Rob are often targeted for kidnappings in South Africa. Detectives released a photo of Leigh, describing her outfit at the time of her abduction: blue jeans, a red top, and a black leather jacket. Sharon made an emotional plea to the kidnapper on national television, asking him to let Leigh go and to tell them where they could find her. She expressed how much she wanted her daughter back to return to her old life, emphasizing the importance of giving her the chance to finish her studies and start a career. She begged him to bring Leigh back. Friends and family were deeply worried about Leigh's safe return home. Her best friend, Giselle Clemson, mentioned that they focused on searching for Leigh to manage their anxiety and uncertainty. A website has been set up to collect information about the kidnapping. The Matthews family offered a reward for any information that could help locate Leigh's, while investigators enlisted cell phone technology experts to try to track her phone. As days went by, Leigh's parents grew increasingly desperate. They spent hours searching the streets for their daughter. In their anguish, Sharon consulted a psychic who claimed she could see something and directed police to an area outside Johannesburg. However, she later stated that she could no longer see anything. Rob and Sharon considered the possibility that the kidnapping might be linked to Rob's work activities. Detectives advised Rob to stop engaging with the media to help ease tensions. Meanwhile, there are growing concerns that the crime could spur other criminals to carry out similar kidnappings. The negotiating team observed that kidnappings are fairly common in southern Africa, occurring approximately once a month. In South Africa, such incidents often resemble a business transaction, with abductors seeking quick financial gain from their victims. While exact statistics are not released for security reasons, the number of kidnappings is reported to be quite high. On average, kidnappings in South Africa last about 21 days, with most victims eventually returning home safely after ransom payments are made. Investigators noted that the kidnapper had targeted the victim in advance, following her movements and selecting the right time to abduct her. The Matthews family remained hopeful that Leigh will come back safely and believed the kidnapper would make contact regarding the ransom soon. On July 21, 2004, a street sweeper in Grasmere Square discovered the naked body of a young girl. He immediately contacted police, who identified the victim as Leigh Matthews. Her body had 3 gunshot wounds and was found bound. The area was quickly sealed off by police, and over 50 officers, including forensic teams, began investigating the crime scene. The medical examiner concluded that Leigh had been killed about 4 or 5 days before her body was found, which was a week after her family had paid part of the ransom. Soon after, speculation arose in the community that she was murdered because her family couldn't pay the full ransom amount. However, police dismissed these rumors. The entire nation of South Africa became involved in the search for information about the killer. The case, initially classified as a kidnapping, was updated to a murder investigation, and a manhunt for the perpetrator began. The South African police put together a report based on over 100 interviews and leads. Last month, investigators reached out to other kidnapping victims who had paid ransoms, asking for their help in the investigation. Recent autopsy results provided new information about the murder. Investigators suspect that Leigh's body was frozen for several days before her murder scene was staged in the square, indicating she was killed elsewhere. Additionally, it was determined that different parts of Leigh's body were decomposing at different rates, which suggests that some part were frozen in a large container of ice. The criminal group's actions were described as a clever calculation to mislead the police. Forensic scientists found a group of bullets near Leigh's body, but later confirmed that these bullets did not match the crime scene. There were no developments in the case until early October, when a suspect was arrested. The suspect, 24 years old Donovan Moodley, was a student at the same university as Leigh. Before his arrest, Donovan confessed to the murder to several friends, and one of them reported this to the police. Donovan's fingerprint matched one found on the tape used to bind Leigh's hands, and his phone was tracked alongside Leigh's after the kidnapping. After Donovan's arrest, more information about the case came to light. Initially, it was said that Leigh's family didn't call the police until they lost contact with the kidnapper. However, this was a mistake. They actually contacted the police right away, and the police went with them to meet the kidnapper, who was hiding in Leigh's father's car, Rob. Just minutes before the ransom was to be exchanged, the kidnapper unexpectedly changed the meeting location because he felt the risk of being seen by a police officer was too great, so he left the car. In July of the following year, Donovan pleaded guilty to 3 charges related to Leigh's murder. He made this plea shortly before the trial was set to begin. In the Johannesburg High Court, his lawyer read out chilling statements regarding the kidnapping and murder of Leigh. The lawyer stated that Donovan killed Leigh because he could not find a way to free her without being followed. Donovan admitted that he had been planning to kidnap the girls for over a week, as he thought they were from wealthy families and would likely pay a ransom. He did not specifically target Leigh, she was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time while he was searching for a victim. despite coming from a good family, but Donovan was motivated by greed. The defendant Donovan stated that he approached Leigh in the university parking lot that night and asked her for a ride. He then pulled out a gun, forced her to lie on the floor of his car, tied her up, taped her mouth shut, and put a balaclava over her head. Donovan explained that he became worried about police checkpoints and realized he had nowhere to escape. He understood that he could not let her go without facing consequences, so he decided to kill her. He ordered her to strip naked before shooting her in the back of the head. After that, he shot her 3 more times to ensure she was dead, using special bullets designed to explode upon impact, to cause the greatest damage. After the murder, Donovan behaved as if nothing had happened. He gave a ring to his girlfriend and proposed to her, and he even participated in a volleyball tournament. He was later charged with kidnapping and murder. In court, during his confession, Donovan described his actions as disgusting. He admitted to holding her captive for several days prior to killing her. After Donovan's confession, the prosecutor was permitted to present witnesses to show that Donovan did not completely admit to all his crimes, seeking the toughest sentence possible. The prosecutor highlighted that Donovan stated he shot Leigh at the location where her body was discovered, but they contended this was untrue. Forensic evidence indicated that the body had been stored in a freezer for several days before being moved to the square. The prosecution also suspected that Donovan may have had an accomplice, and he did not reveal where he had kept Leigh or what he had done to her. The medical examiner observed that the condition of Leigh's fingers and toes suggested that her body had been in contact with the surfaces of a refrigerator or freezer. Additionally, there were tissue marks on other parts of her body that could have been caused by being wrapped in a blanket. He pointed out that rigor mortis suggested her body had been kept cool, and only 400 milliliters of blood remained in her body. This suggested that she had been murdered and that the blood had been drained elsewhere, as no blood was found at the crime scene. Furthermore, the absence of maggots indicated that her body had not been left at the scene for long and had likely been frozen. It was revealed that Donovan had called his girlfriend near the crime scene, and his phone was found close to the location as well. There was further evidence against him, including a 9mm pistol on him, which was the same weapon used in the murder. During the trial, Leigh's father described Donovan as a manipulative coward who did not deserve to live. He emphasized that Donovan's capacity to resume his normal life after the murder demonstrated his ruthlessness. Throughout the trial, Donovan displayed no emotion until his father, Stephen, was called to testify. Stephen felt proud of his son's job promotions, but that pride disappeared in light of the crime. He stated that his son had committed a brutal act and did not deserve forgiveness. Stephen mentioned that Donovan never asked for money from the family, as they were financially stable, which confused him about why his son acted the way he did. He expressed sympathy for the Leigh family, saying that they were ashamed to be connected to such a brutal crime and that they took responsibility because he was their son and would always be their son. He added that they could never alleviate this pain and prayed that the Leigh family could forgive his son. These words brought Donovan to tears. Donovan has faced many emotional difficulties throughout his life. In 2001, Donovan's grandfather was fatally stabbed by his uncle, who was not convicted of murder. Instead of serving time, the uncle was sent to a psychiatric hospital. The prosecution sought a life sentence for him, while Donovan's lawyer claimed that the uncle felt deep remorse for his actions and did not merit a lighter sentence. The lawyer also stated that the uncle had only pleaded guilty because of overwhelming evidence against him. In the end, the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment for murder, equating to 25 years, along with an additional 15 years for kidnapping and 10 years for extortion. During sentencing, the judge described Donovan's crime as extremely brutal, stating it had destroyed his own life and devastated his family's lives. The sentence given to him was among the most severe in South Africa. Following the trial, investigators announced plans to look into whether anyone else was involved in the murder, suspecting that Donovan might have an accomplice. Investigators pointed out that certain parts of the case needed more investigation because of inconsistencies. A few months after his guilty verdict, Donovan notified the Johannesburg High Court of his intention to seek a retrial, claiming he had been framed. In October 2009, he submitted documents to the Supreme Court of Appeal, arguing that he should not spend the rest of his life in prison because he had not intended to kill. He also alleged that the judge who sentenced him was biased due to the media coverage surrounding the case. In interviews, Donovan argued that the incident was manslaughter rather than murder, and he believed he deserved a lighter sentence. He described the life sentences he received as shockingly inappropriate. His new lawyers supported this view, stating that the prosecution had failed to prove that the murder was premeditated. Ultimately, the court denied Donovan's motion, and his conviction was upheld. He remained silent for a while until July 2011, when he appealed to the Supreme Court for a retrial. In his appeal, he claimed that 3 drug dealers named Frank A. Leigh and Jumbo had coerced him into participating in the kidnapping by threatening to harm his family, and that is the motive of crime. Donovan stated that the plan had changed, and they were going to kidnap someone else. He was supposed to wait in the car for Leigh to come down the stairs. However, A. Leigh followed Leigh to the car and grabbed her. She was not their original target, but they decided to kidnap her when they spotted her in the university parking lot. Donovan mentioned that he was instructed to go with Frank to dispose of Leigh's car near the campus. They were then to meet A. Leigh and Jumbo. Frank used Leigh's phone to call Rob and demanded a ransom. After the money was delivered, Donovan said he was forced to witness Jumbo shoot Leigh. Donovan expressed his fear that drug dealers would kill him, and he pleaded for his life. Allegedly, Jumbo placed Donovan's clothes in his car and instructed him to dispose of a body at home, which resulted in his fingerprints being found on the tape used to bind Leigh's hands. Donovan claimed he was so confused that he never reported Frank A. Leigh and Jumbo to the police. He accused investigators of fabricating evidence against him and turning the media against him. Ironically, during his last appeal, Donovan confessed to the murder. His petition was denied, but he filed it again the following year. In this appeal, Donovan compared himself to Jesus Christ on the cross, portrayed himself as a victim of circumstances, and complained about being denied legal assistance. He insisted that his confession was false and coerced, but this appeal was also rejected. The kidnapping and murder of Leigh Matthews has deeply saddened people all over South Africa. Sadly, the trial of Donovan did not alleviate the suffering of Leigh's parents. During the intense trial, Leigh's mother expressed that Donovan had shattered their family with his actions. She shared that every night before going to bed, they still visit Leigh's room, wishing to find her there, unharmed, smiling, safe, and at home. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Celia Barquin. On Monday, September 17, 2018, in Ames, Iowa, the weather was warm and clear. Celia Barquin Arozamena, a 22-year-old university student, decided to play golf at Coldwater Golf Links Club before her classes. During her drive to the course, she spoke with her mother, who expressed concern for her safety. Despite her confidence, Celia's day took a devastating turn. Although the golf course was crowded, she became the victim of a horrific crime. Born on July 6, 1996, in Point San Miguel, a small village in northern Spain, Celia had moved to Iowa on a golf scholarship, leaving behind a family that had lived in the village for 8 generations. Celia, a talented athlete, had numerous university options offering her a tuition-free education. However, she chose to attend a university in Ames, Iowa, a quiet and cozy town with a population of 65,000, which reminded her of her hometown in Spain. At the time, she had no idea that this decision would have severe consequences and that Ames would become her final refuge. Celia was very close to her family, who remained in her home country. Her parents, Maria Rosa and Marcos Barkin, had 2 children, Celia and her sibling Andres. Her father worked as a butcher, while her mother initially worked in a clothing store as a salesperson. After the children were born, she became a full-time homemaker, dedicating herself to raising the children and managing the household. The family lived a modest life, but they were a close-knit and supportive one. Their children's well-being and education were their top priority. Andres pursued a career in law, while Celia, who had a natural talent for golf, earned a scholarship to study in the United States. Celia had a clear goal in mind: to buy a house for her family and take care of them. To achieve this, she worked hard and practiced diligently to excel in her sport. Her efforts paid off, earning her numerous titles and awards in various competitions. Notably, she won the European Women's Amateur Championship in Slovenia in June 2018, came in second in the European Women's Team Golf Competition, and was crowned the 2018 Confederation Big 12 Women's Golf Champion in the United States. She was also named the 2018 Iowa State Athlete of the Year. With her impressive achievements, Celia's future looked bright, and many had high expectations for her. Despite moving to the United States, Celia remained close to her family. She made it a point to call her parents every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Whenever she had free time, she would feel homesick and miss her family dearly. During her vacations, Celia would visit her family in Spain. Even on her home country breaks, she continued to work tirelessly to refine her skills. Her mother was a strong supporter of her daughter's passion and often joined her in training sessions. Celia had a comfortable life in Iowa, where she lived with her boyfriend, Carlos Nigri Nablas, in a rented apartment. Their relationship had an interesting backstory. They met in university, where Celia was already in a relationship with someone else. Despite this, Carlos was immediately smitten with her. Her captivating smile, kind nature, and determined personality drew him in, and he came to greatly respect her perseverance. Although she wasn't available at the time, Carlos became her closest friend and confidant, always offering support and encouragement. For over a year, Carlos supported his friend Celia through her tumultuous relationship with her boyfriend. When she finally broke up with him, Carlos confessed his long-held feelings to her. After a walk together, Celia revealed her own feelings by pulling Carlos close and kissing him. Overjoyed by her reciprocation, Carlos ran through the dormitory, screaming with happiness. This marked the beginning of their romance. To celebrate, Carlos set off fireworks and sent Celia a heartfelt video, expressing his admiration for her. As their relationship blossomed, they became inseparable. Eventually, they decided to take the next step and move in together. Carlos and Celia were busy preparing for their future together, having already gotten engaged. In May 2017, Carlos graduated from college and landed a job at an engineering firm in Ames. Meanwhile, Celia was nearing the end of her senior year at Iowa State University, where she was also studying civil engineering. After retiring from athletics, Celia had her sights set on a career in engineering, driven by a desire to make a positive impact and prove that women could thrive in a traditionally male-dominated field. Celia spent the summer of 2018 in Spain with her family before returning to Iowa to graduate. As a member of the Iowa State women's golf team, she was a promising athlete who also competed individually. She was preparing for an upcoming competition, but her plans were about to take a devastating turn. On September 17, 2018, Celia arrived at the golf club after speaking with her mother. The staff, familiar with the talented athlete, informed her that a group of 15 older men from Des Moines would be playing golf at 8:45. The group was assigned to the starting line near the first 4 holes. As they arrived in golf carts and began to play, Celia took notice of them. A group of retirees invited Celia to begin her round, so she proceeded with her cart, opting to play the first hole followed by the fourth to avoid delaying the older men. They found her to be courteous and friendly. Next, Celia headed to the seventh hole, a location not favored by many due to its remote position relative to the other holes and its proximity to Squaw Creek Park, which featured dense foliage. Athletes were often hesitant to play at the seventh hole because it occasionally attracted unauthorized visitors, including homeless individuals who could be aggressive. However, Celia was new to the club and unaware of the situation, so she played the seventh hole to make her way to the ninth. The route involved crossing a bridge on a broad path before navigating a wooded section, a place one coach described as eerily similar to the atmosphere of Sleepy Hollow. At 10:30 a.m., a group of 15 people made their way to the area where Celia's belongings were left. To their surprise, her cart was still there, but Celia was nowhere to be found. The group decided to investigate further as they found it unusual that she didn't reappear after 10 minutes. As they approached her cart, they discovered some of Celia's belongings scattered on the field, including her t-shirt and baseball cap, while her phone remained on the cart. It appeared that some items had fallen out of her pocket, but it was unclear why her t-shirt was on the ground and why she had left her phone behind. After searching the surrounding area, the group couldn't find any sign of Celia. They immediately alerted the club management to report their disturbing findings. A group of people reported that a young, blonde girl had been playing golf at the course earlier, but she was now nowhere to be found, and her belongings were still on the ground. Upon investigation, staff realized that she was Celia, the reigning European golf champion. A search was launched, and less than 30 minutes later, a body was spotted floating in a pond near the ninth hole. This discovery prompted the staff to call the police immediately. Upon recovering the body from the water, police officers identified the victim as Celia Barkin. An autopsy revealed that she had suffered multiple stab wounds to her neck and torso. A search dog was brought in and quickly picked up a scent, leading the police to a tent in a wooded area of Squaw Creek Park. Although the tent was empty, it contained bloodstains, suggesting that the perpetrator may have been hiding there. Police suspected that a homeless person, possibly living in the tent, might have been responsible for the attack. The police were searching for the perpetrator and found a man near the tent. The man claimed to live in the area and just wanted to retrieve his tent. As it turned out, the man was Colin Richards, 22 years old, the same age as Celia. Despite their similar ages, they couldn't be more different. However, it became clear that Colin was responsible for the murder. Physical evidence incriminated him. His face was badly scratched, and his black backpack contained bloody clothes, including a t-shirt and shorts. The clothes indicated that he had recently changed out of his blood-soaked garments and into clean ones. The police dogs also picked up his scent. Additionally, Colin had a severe gash on his left arm that was bleeding. Although he tried to hide the injury and conceal his arm from the officers, his efforts only added to their suspicions. Colin Richards was arrested by police in connection with the crime. According to his account, he was at a friend's house before the police arrived. Two male friends had driven him to the park to collect his tent, and it was there that he encountered the police. Collins denied any involvement in the crime and claimed he had never met the victim, Celia. He explained the scratches on his face by saying he had scratched himself on branches while walking through a wooded area. Colin had a history with the police, having struggled with substance abuse, alcoholism, and mental health issues. He had become homeless after being released from prison 3 months prior to the murder, having served a 7-month sentence for burglary. Colin had a history of run-ins with the law, having been convicted multiple times for similar offenses. His troubled past began in his teenage years, and he grew up in a dysfunctional family. Detectives interviewed 3 acquaintances of Colin's, including a homeless man with whom he shared a tent. 2 other men gave Colin a ride from his home to the park. The homeowner allowed Colin to clean up and change his clothes, as he was disheveled and covered in mud, blood, sand, and water. After washing up and changing, Colin left with his bloody clothes in a backpack, intending to return to the park to retrieve his tent before leaving the area. The men described Colin's behavior that day as unusual, extremely nervous, and hurried. He didn't explain why he was in such a rush, only mentioning that he had cut himself and soiled his clothes. One of the homeless men who lived with Colin in the park revealed that Colin always carried a serrated knife, which he used for personal protection. The day before the murder, Colin had confided in this friend about having a desire to rape and kill someone, but the friend didn't take him seriously. Colin was immediately charged with first-degree murder after her body was discovered. The investigators believed that the crime was premeditated, meaning Colin had planned it ahead of time and was actively looking for a victim on the day of the murder. The judge set Colin's bail at $5 million, but since he couldn't afford it, he remained in custody until his trial. Meanwhile, Celia's family in Spain was growing increasingly worried because they hadn't heard from her. Despite numerous attempts by the police and aims to reach them, it was too late at night in Spain and no one was available to receive the devastating news. Eventually, the coach was forced to make the heartbreaking call to Celia's parents, informing them that their daughter had been brutally murdered. A serrated knife was discovered in a wooded area, bearing the fingerprints and DNA of Colin, as well as the blood of the deceased. Additionally, skin particles from Colin were found under the victim's fingernails, indicating that the scratches on his body were inflicted by the victim during a struggle, not by branches. Initially, Colin denied any involvement in the crime, but later, faced with overwhelming evidence, he confessed to the attack. He claimed that he had been under the influence of substances on the day of the incident and was not thinking clearly. Colin stated that he had been walking in the woods when he came across a young girl, Celia, who was alone in the area. He targeted her, having never seen or known her before, and subjected her to a violent attack. The death penalty was abolished in Iowa in 1965, so the maximum sentence Colin faced was life imprisonment without parole. During the trial, Colin's family shared details about his life. His parents were not married and did not live together when he was born. For the first 10 years of his life, Colin lived with his father, who raised him in a strict and often neglectful manner. His father would frequently leave him alone at night to go to the bar, and it was actually his grandparents who provided Colin with care and support. When Colin was 10, his mother, who had since married another man and had 2 more children, gained custody of him. The family moved to the countryside, seeking a more peaceful environment. However, their household was still marked by strict discipline. Colin's room was extremely tidy, leading his family to jokingly suggest that he would be well suited for a career in the military. Colin started out as a diligent student, but as he entered his teenage years, he began to follow in the footsteps of his father, a heavy drinker. Despite his father's attempts to set him straight, Colin's behavior worsened, leading to his expulsion from the family home at the age of 15. Without a stable support system, Colin fell in with a bad crowd, dropped out of school, and became addicted to substances. At 18, Colin was involved with a girlfriend significantly older than him. However, their relationship turned violent, and he was arrested for domestic abuse in May 2015. He was found guilty and served a 60-day jail sentence. On another occasion, Colin was accused of shoplifting, responded by threatening to return and carry out a violent act. Despite his downward spiral, those around him seemed to ignore his problems. Over the next 2 years following the domestic violence incident, Colin had multiple run-ins with the law, being arrested for various offenses such as theft, harassment, and attempted burglary. In an attempt to address his behavioral issues, he was ordered to take intervention courses, but these efforts were unsuccessful. In November 2017, Colin began serving a 2-year sentence at Mount Pleasant Correctional Facility for burglary in violating his probation. However, due to the facility being over capacity, he was paroled in June 2018 after only serving 7 months of his sentence, despite exhibiting disciplinary problems, including engaging in fights with other inmates. Sadly, Colin went on to commit a heinous crime just 3 months later, killing Celia. After his release from prison, Colin reunited with his mother and stepfather, with whom he resided, and resumed a relationship that had been rekindled through correspondence during his incarceration. Colin's parents gave him a chance to start anew, trusting that he would stay away from illicit substances and old friends with a bad influence. However, he broke this promise just 2 weeks later and was subsequently kicked out of his home. With nowhere to go, Colin traveled to Ames, a city an hour away, where he initially sought refuge in the local homeless shelter. Unfortunately, the shelter was full, and he had to find alternative accommodations. Colin's mother helped him out by purchasing a tent, which became his temporary home. However, his presence in Ames soon caught the attention of the local police department. On June 29, Colin was arrested for public intoxication. Later, on August 11, police received a complaint from a Target store about Colin and another homeless man camping in the store's parking lot. After being chased away, they men relocated to Squaw Creek Park, where they could camp without disturbing others. There is a discrepancy between Colin's account and the police's statement regarding his camping in the park. Colin claims that the police allowed him to camp there, but the police representatives deny this and assert that overnight camping in the park is prohibited. They also claim that Colin was not given permission to camp and that he was breaking the law if he did so. On September 8, Colin's mother and stepfather visited him in Ames to celebrate his 22nd birthday. During their time together, they took him out to dinner and did his laundry. However, his mother became concerned about his behavior, as he was distant and gave brief, muted responses to their questions. After dropping him off at the tent in the park where he was living with another man, Colin's parents returned home. Unbeknownst to them, Colin would soon confess to a friend that he had been thinking about raping and killing a woman. Tragically, the next morning, Celia was found dead, although it was later determined that she had not been raped. The police suggested that Colin likely did not have sufficient time to commit both crimes. Following his arrest and trial, Colin's parents expressed their regret that they could not have done more to stop him. As a result, Colin was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on August 23, 2019. He is currently serving his sentence at the Story County Jail in Nevada, Iowa. The town of Ames was deeply saddened by Celia's tragic death, with thousands attending a candlelight vigil to pay tribute to the gifted athlete. Her family was devastated by the news of her murder, feeling a sense of injustice that her life had been taken by someone who had achieved nothing and had no aspirations, whereas Celia had shown great promise and had a bright future ahead of her. Celia's parents have preserved her room as a memorial, with the addition of an engineering degree that was awarded to her posthumously by the state of Iowa. They often visit the local golf club, where Celia learned to play golf, and reminisce about happy times. The circumstances surrounding the safety measures implemented by the golf club for holes 7 and 17 following the incident are unclear. Carlos, Celia's boyfriend, found it unbearable to remain in the city where constant reminders of her presence made his grief unbearable. He relocated to Florida, and his life after that remains a mystery. Celia's brother was deeply affected by her death, losing a significant amount of weight due to stress. However, he found solace in a career driven by his sister's encouragement to help others. He pursued a law degree and subsequently joined the police force. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Catherine Wells Burr. Catherine Wells Burr was born in 1989 in the United Kingdom to parents Phil and Jane Wells Burr. She has an older sister named Lynn. In the summer of 2010, Catherine met Rafał Nowak, a 31-year-old co-worker, on a university break while working on a new vacuum cleaner production line. Rafał was an immigrant from Poland with a previous marriage and a son, had moved to England 4 years earlier seeking a better life. Rafał and Catherine started dating, initially meeting for lunch at the production site cafe, but soon progressing to romantic dinners. Rafał showered Catherine with gifts, took Catherine to movies, and went on walks with Catherine. As their relationship deepened, Rafał shared his past and reasons for moving to the UK with Catherine. Rafał's trustworthy nature allows her to open up completely to him. Within a few months, Catherine introduced Rafał to her parents, who welcomed him into their family and hoped for Rafał and Catherine's future happiness. Soon, Rafał and Catherine began planning their wedding. Catherine graduated with honors from Bath Spa University in 2011 and secured a promising job as a business analyst at Pneumatic International, the manufacturer of Henry vacuum cleaners. Her career progressed quickly, helping her have good job opportunities. Catherine is smart, highly educated, and has good interaction skills with others. She shows genuine interest in her co-workers' problems and cares for those around her. Her kind demeanor and radiant smile have earned her the admiration of her colleagues, who view her as a young leader. Catherine's career was advancing swiftly, and her substantial earnings, combined with those of her partner Rafał, allowed them to purchase a spacious home with a terrace in Willow Way. Although they were financially secure, they opted to take out a mortgage, securing insurance coverage as per their agreement with the bank. With their youth, successful careers, and love for each other, it seemed they had all the ingredients for happiness. However, the fateful day of September 12, 2012, marked a turning point in their lives, changing everything forever. On September 12, 2012, Orlando, a local resident, was driving home after a night shift at the gas station. He is in a hurry to take his daughter Maria to kindergarten as he promised his wife. While driving, he noticed black smoke coming from a nearby parking lot after turning a sharp corner. Smoke billowed from a car engulfed in flames. Orlando stopped and tried to get a closer look but couldn't due to the intense fire. When firefighters arrived 4 minutes later, the car was completely burned out. The police cordoned off the area to keep onlookers away. The location was relatively deserted due to the early hour, and there were no witnesses to the incident. Upon investigation, a charred body was found. The police needed to identify the victim and determine the cause of death. There were no signs of a car accident or any evidence of another vehicle being involved. The police initially suspected that the car may have caught fire due to a malfunction or self-ignition. A thorough investigation was conducted, involving multiple expert analyses. The remains were sent to a forensic laboratory to determine the identity and cause of death. The police also examined fragments of the burned vehicle to identify any malfunctions and establish the cause of the fire. The police began by checking the missing persons database and recent reports of disappearances. They quickly identified the deceased as 23-year-old Catherine Wells Barr. On the same day, Rafał Nowak filed a missing persons report for his girlfriend, Catherine. According to Rafał, he left for work at 5:30 a.m. while Catherine was still asleep. When she failed to show up for work, and Rafał couldn't find her at any of her relatives' homes, he contacted the police. The investigation involved interviewing the victim's family, including her parents and sister, as well as Rafał, her colleagues, and friends. By gathering information about the last days and years of Catherine's life, the police were able to reconstruct the events leading up to her tragic death. The investigation into Catherine's disappearance continued to uncover shocking details about her life with Rafał. As the truth began to emerge, it became clear that their relationship had been built on lies from the start. Rafał, a 29-year-old man from Poland, had left his wife and child behind to escape his debts. He moved to the UK, where he met Anna Levick, with whom he had a long-term relationship starting in 2008. When Raffel met Catherine, he initially maintained relationships with both women. However, he eventually chose Catherine, believing she offered more stability and financial security. Catherine, unaware of Raffel's true intentions, genuinely desired a happy marriage and family with him. Meanwhile, Raffel was secretly planning to kill Catherine, intending to use the life insurance payout and the large house they shared to fund a new life with his mistress, Anna. The murder was carefully planned and executed with exceptional cruelty. On the day Catherine went missing, Raffel waited a few hours before reporting her disappearance to her boss, pretending to be frantically worried about her whereabouts. He feigned panic and despair in front of Catherine's colleagues and relatives, claiming she had been receiving threatening letters from a mentally unstable admirer. When Catherine's car was found missing and she was not at her parents' home or her own, Raffel's fake concern led Catherine's family to contact the police. Raffel recounted that the evening before her disappearance had been a normal evening. Raffel and Catherine went for a walk, bought groceries, had dinner, watched TV, and went to bed together. Catherine seemed calm. However, a thorough investigation revealed that her death occurred earlier. She was strangled around 2 a.m., likely in her own bed while asleep. Her body was placed in the car, driven a short distance, and set on fire to destroy evidence. Raffel Novak had a solid alibi, as he was at work from 5:30 a.m. He claimed Catherine was asleep in bed when he left. The burning car was discovered between 6 and 7 a.m. However, Raffel was still at home at 1:30 a.m., which significantly altered the case's direction. As a result, Raffel Novak became the prime suspect in Catherine Wells Burr's murder. The evidence allowed for Raffel to be detained pending further investigation. Raffel claimed that Catherine was being stalked, which had caused her significant distress. However, during the investigation, it was discovered that Catherine had a secret online life. She had accounts on several adult websites, where she shared intimate photos and engaged in flirtatious conversations with men. A letter from a secret admirer was also found. Despite attempts to mislead the investigation, evidence was uncovered that proved Raffel's direct involvement in Catherine's demise. Notably, Raffel had a motive to kill Catherine. Investigators found that he had been in continuous communication with Anna Legwinowicz, and they had met regularly over the past few months. Furthermore, it was discovered that Raffel had a financial motive. Shortly before Catherine's death, they had both taken out life insurance policies worth £123,000. Raffel and Catherine were the sole beneficiaries of each other's policies, meaning they would receive the payouts in the event of the other's death. The main motive behind Catherine's death and the burning of her car to mislead the investigation was found to be a large life insurance payout. On the day she went missing, Catherine sent a message to Anna's phone. Additionally, security cameras showed Anna and her uncle filling a gas can at a gas station a few days before the crime. This new information brought a third person into the investigation. Anna Legwinowicz, 32, and her uncle, Tadeusz Dimitrison, 38, along with Raffel Novak, are suspected of being accomplices in a premeditated crime and arson to cover up evidence. The crime was carefully planned by them over several months. They created accounts on adult websites, uploaded doctored images of Catherine, and created chats with various men to mislead the investigation. When faced with undeniable evidence, Raffel and Anna couldn't deny their involvement any longer and began blaming each other. Raffel claimed that Anna, driven by jealousy, planned and carried out the crime to eliminate Catherine. In contrast, Anna accused Raffel of committing the crime out of greed, seeking to secure the insurance payout for the house. To avoid detection, the conspirators forged much evidence related to Catherine. They created fake profiles about Catherine on dating websites, portraying her as a promiscuous and highly sexual woman. Also, to cover their tracks, the conspirators burned Catherine's body and created a fake story about her. They invented a fictitious lover, and they believed that he might be responsible for Catherine's death. One of the conspirators even sent a text message from Catherine's phone to this fictitious person, suggesting that she was on her way to meet him. However, forensic experts discovered that when the fire broke out, Catherine was only wearing her favorite nightgown, not an appropriate outfit to meet someone. Despite the evidence, Raffel refused to acknowledge his involvement in Catherine's death. Instead, he told Jane, Catherine's mother, that her daughter was receiving threatening emails and text messages from an ex-boyfriend who said if he couldn't have her, no one could. Raffel also claimed that Catherine had spoken of taking her own life. In a shocking display of deceit, Raffel allowed Catherine's parents to comfort him, believing he was also mourning the loss of Catherine he loved. Raffel's acting was incredibly convincing. After Catherine's death, her mother, Jane, was so taken in by his performance that she hugged him and allowed him to call her mom. Jane explained that in the early stages of the investigation, the police viewed Raffel more as a witness than a suspect, so she decided to offer him her full support. Her reasoning was that if Catherine had loved him that much and he was considered part of their family, then he deserved their support. The trial, chaired by Justice Sharp, began and the jury heard that Raffel and his two co-defendants stood to gain a significant amount from Catherine's death. They hoped to receive a life insurance payout of £123,000 and half ownership of a two-bedroom home in Mangold, Somerset, valued at £137,000. During the trial, it was revealed that when police found Catherine's body in her burned car on the morning of September 12, Raffel showed no emotion. Anna Legwinowicz frequently shook her head and laughed in court when it was suggested she was responsible for the crime, but refused to testify. Tadevs also chose not to testify in his defense. The judge, Justice Sharp, told the defendants the murder was a horrific and merciless crime. The defendants showed no emotion during sentencing. The judge described Anna Legwinowicz's behavior as deceitful, manipulative, and cruel, and stated she played a significant role in the crime. He also told Tadevs that the murder was committed for gain, with many aggravating circumstances and no mitigating ones. The judge expressed deep sympathy for Catherine's parents, who had no idea that Raffel Novak's charming facade hid a monster. Raffel's actions were driven by financial gain, as he had no emotional ties to Catherine. Catherine's mother stated that the brutal and calculated manner of her daughter's death would haunt them forever. She regretted not having the chance to say goodbye or express her love, and now considers Raffel an evil person who deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. Catherine's father, Philip, added that they had welcomed Raffel into their home, treating him like a son, only to be betrayed by him. During the trial, Raffel Novak became emotional in the witness box. He denied any involvement in the death of his girlfriend, Catherine Wells Burr. Raffel claimed everyone was blaming him for a crime he did not commit. However, the court heard that Raffel showed no emotion when the police discovered Catherine's body in her burned-out car on September 12 last year. Catherine's mother, Jane Wells Burr, testified that after his initial release from police custody, Raffel asked for a steak dinner and didn't even mention Catherine. Jane Wells Burr stated that her daughter's fate was sealed when she and Raffel bought a house together and took out a life insurance policy. She believes that in signing the contract, Catherine also signed her own death warrant. Ultimately, the court found Raffel Novak guilty of suffocating Catherine with a pillow while she slept. He had conspired with his secret lover, Anna Legwinowicz, and her uncle, Tadevs, to claim a £123,000 life insurance payout and a share of the house. Anna and Tadevs had transported Catherine's body in her car to a remote location and set it on fire. Raffel and Anna were sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 32 years, while Tadevs received a 27-year sentence. After the verdict, Catherine's parents, Philip and Jane Wells Burr, advocated for stricter immigration laws. They believed that if the UK had more stringent immigration rules, like the US, Rafał Nowak would not have been allowed entry. Rafał had previously been convicted of assaulting his wife in Poland. Philip and Jane, who divorced after Catherine's death, blamed the European Union for the UK's lenient immigration policies. Jane stated that the UK does not thoroughly check people entering the country. She was unaware of Rafał's previous assault charge in Poland and believes the government needs to prevent individuals like Rafał from freely entering the country. Following the verdict, Catherine's mother paid tribute to her daughter, describing her as a beautiful, determined, and hard-working individual who earned a first-class degree from the University of Bath Spa. Catherine's family expressed their devastation and loss, stating they were proud of her accomplishments and had no idea how to move forward without her. They believed she had great potential and a promising life ahead, but it was cruelly taken away from her and her loved ones. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Wendy Trapaga. Yolanda Cirillo was born in Miami, Florida. She was a 28-year-old single mother who lived a quiet life away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Yolanda had devoted herself to raising her daughter and being a model mother, giving up the party life. After a while, Yolanda was ready to find stability and a new partner. She began a relationship with Michel Escoto, a man known for his good looks and impeccable grooming. Their relationship, which started out innocent and harmonious, gradually developed into love. Yolanda and Michel met at a computer engineering school, although they had opposite personalities. She was calm and practical, while he was a romantic, adventurous, and gregarious person. Despite their differences, they found each other and began a promising relationship. Michel and Yolanda Cirillo seemed like an unlikely couple. However, after a year of living together, they started building a family. Yolanda, who already had a child from a previous relationship, was very happy to see her boyfriend Escoto loving her daughter. Everything seemed fine, but Michel still had one unfulfilled dream. He wanted to build a successful career and start his own business. Yolanda fully supported Michel's dream because she knew that his success would ensure a stable future for her and her daughter. She also hoped that they would get married and start a family. Michel promised Yolanda that he would give them the dream life they both craved when he achieved financial success. When looking at the most lucrative industries in Miami, Michel realized that there was a great demand for cosmetic services. So he decided to delve into this field. With a basic knowledge of hairdressing, he wanted to learn more about business to open his own salon. His goal was to create a space that was welcoming to everyone. Michel found a beauty school near where he lived and enrolled in February 2002. While studying at this school, Michel found himself different because he was one of the few men in the beauty industry, while he was surrounded by young, dynamic women. These women were very interested in Michel because he was charming and easily won their hearts. This made him popular among the female students. However, despite his relationship with Yolanda, Michel could not resist the charms of Wendy Trapaga, a beautiful 21-year-old girl. He began to flirt with her and often behaved inappropriately around her, but he still did not tell Yolanda about these things. Every night, Michel still returned to Yolanda, maintaining the appearance of a normal family life, but the more time he spent with Wendy, the more he felt guilty towards Yolanda. Wendy Trapaga was different from the women Michel had met before. Wendy was sweet, charming, and had the figure of a model. Wendy was born on April 29, 1981, the daughter of Miriam and Ernest. She grew up in a normal and loving family. Wendy had always been loved by her father, Ernest, who had always made sure that Wendy had grown up in an environment filled with love and respect. Ernest had been a cargo pilot, and his job had required him to travel frequently, which had made Wendy always look forward to his return from each trip. Every time he had returned home, Wendy had been extremely happy and had received a gift from him. March 31, 1988, had been an unforgettable day in Wendy's life, when she had been 16 years old. Wendy's father's plane had exploded at an altitude of 150 feet above the ground and had crashed into a barren land near the runway. This tragedy had taken the lives of all passengers on board. The deep sadness that Wendy had experienced that day had followed her throughout her life. Ernest had been 61 years old when he had passed away, leaving Wendy's mother, Miriam, deeply saddened. After becoming a widow, Miriam had devoted herself to supporting her family and had secured a position as a school administrative assistant. She had worked hard to be able to supervise extracurricular programs at an elementary school in Miami-Dade County. Eventually, Miriam had found love again and had married Juan Bonnets. Wendy had had half-siblings who had warmly accepted her, providing her with the much-needed affection she had been missing since her father's death. During her teenage years, Wendy had developed a strong passion for aesthetics and high fashion. She had possessed a captivating beauty with deep brown eyes, long hair, and a radiant smile, attracting everyone's attention. Despite this, Wendy had remained humble and kind, making those around her admire her even more. After completing her studies, Wendy had gotten married, but unfortunately, this marriage had soon fallen apart. This had motivated her to pursue her passion and learn from her relatives who had run beauty salons. So she had enrolled in Label Beauty Academy in Miami. There, Wendy had met Michel Escato, a man who could make her smile. Michel's charm and compliments had captivated her. Michel had introduced himself as an executive in the web design industry, with a degree in technology. Perhaps the loss of her father at an early age had made Wendy more sympathetic to older men, considering them safe. However, Michel had not revealed to Wendy that he had a girlfriend, Yolanda. Instead, he had spent more time with Wendy. The feelings between Wendy and Michel had grown deeper and deeper, and they had spent more time together. While Yolanda had thought that Michel was focused on his career, the relationship between Wendy and Michel had naturally turned from emotional to physical. Wendy and Michel had gradually become inseparable. However, Yolanda had felt confused by the changes in her relationship with Michel, even though they had been together for more than 2 years. She had not known that Michel often met other women, one of whom had even sponsored his studies. Initially, Michel had only seen Wendy as a friend, but over time, he had begun to feel deeper feelings for her. He had appreciated the freedom and lack of pressure in his relationship with Wendy. However, Michel had always kept his relationship with Wendy a secret. Even though Michel and Wendy had been entering their second month of a romantic relationship, Michel had hidden it from everyone, which had made Wendy feel confused. Yolanda had also felt that Michel seemed to be growing more distant and their relationship had started to feel more like best friends than lovers. Yolanda had become suspicious of Michel's schedule, and the silence had made the two of them grow more distant. Michel had eventually decided to end his relationship with Yolanda because he had fallen in love with Wendy. In August 2002, Michel and Yolanda had had an argument, and to express his dissatisfaction, Michel had packed his things and left. Yolanda could not believe it. Yolanda had dreamed of a future with Michel, but he had left without giving any explanation. Yolanda had tried to understand her shortcomings and the reason behind his departure. Yolanda had kept calling Michel, but he had not answered. Eventually, Yolanda had deciphered his voicemail password and had discovered messages revealing that he had moved in with another woman named Wendy. Yolanda was shocked to learn of Michel and Wendy's relationship and was furious. Michel and Wendy had moved into a modest apartment in Miami. Unexpectedly, in that small space, the two began a life filled with dreams and satisfaction. Although some of Wendy's family objected to her decision to live with Michel, Wendy's mother, Miriam, was concerned that Michel was almost a decade older than Wendy and, on top of that, he was still unemployed. She wondered if Wendy and Michelle had ever shared their jobs or incomes. She was also extremely surprised to find that their house was almost bare, to the point that Wendy and Michelle had to sleep on the floor. The most important thing to her was Wendy's happiness. While Wendy was always careful about her finances and kept a tight budget, Michelle, on the other hand, was wasteful and unclear about how he earned his money. Miriam simply thought that Michelle made money through IT to explain her doubts. Because there were so many questions about Michelle, Miriam, and her daughter. Wendy disagreed about Wendy's marriage. Miriam did not agree with Wendy's hasty decision to get married. Ignoring her mother's advice, Wendy and Michelle decided to go ahead with the wedding. They planned to hold a wedding ceremony at the City Hall in October 2002, with a simple legal procedure and a not-so-complicated wedding ceremony. When Miriam asked why they got married so quickly, Wendy revealed that she was pregnant. On October 10, 2002, Wendy and Michelle exchanged vows at the Miami Beach City Hall. They then planned a simple honeymoon in Key West, Florida. Michelle and Wendy left on Friday, October 11th, planning to return Sunday evening. Their two-day adventure in Key West was filled with fun times. However, on Sunday, Michelle and Wendy were reluctant to let their short vacation end. Michelle had booked a luxurious suite in a prestigious, romantic hotel. Wendy was thrilled to have their honeymoon extended unexpectedly. Wendy informed her mother of the decision to extend their stay. Wendy's mother, Miriam, was also delighted to hear the news. Although she was concerned about Wendy's health due to her pregnancy, Miriam was happy for her daughter's happiness. Michelle and Wendy envisioned a romantic evening that included dining out, perhaps watching a movie, or dancing the night away at a nightclub. Michelle and Wendy arrived at the hotel close to midnight and spent some time alone together in their room. Little did they know that this would be Wendy's last night on Earth. At around 5:30 a.m. on Monday, Miriam was awakened by a surprise phone call. When she looked at the clock, she felt anxious about such an early call. Miriam picked up the phone feeling even more nervous. It was Michelle on the other end of the line, asking her if Wendy was with her and speaking in a cryptic tone. Michelle explained that they had gone out drinking the night before and Wendy had wanted to stay even though he had been worried about their unborn child. This had led to their first argument in the car on the way home. He had gone back to the apartment alone while leaving her outside. When he had checked back after 5 to 10 minutes, she had disappeared. All attempts to contact her by phone had failed. After her conversation with Michelle, Miriam had agreed to give Wendy some space even though she was extremely worried about where Wendy might be at the moment. She had tried not to panic, but she had known that Wendy did not act that way. At 6 a.m., a sanitation worker walking his routine route through a commercial warehouse complex in the Northwest Dade area had contacted Miami police after noticing something unusual in the parking lot between two cars. As he had gotten closer, he had come across a woman wearing a blue evening gown lying face down in a pool of blood. Forensic experts had been stunned when they had arrived at the scene and had seen blood splattered on a nearby vehicle. An autopsy later revealed that the woman had been struck multiple times with a heavy object, leaving her body disfigured beyond recognition. Although no weapon had been found at the scene, the deceased had been quickly identified as Wendy Trapaga thanks to a driver's license and a wallet containing identifying items found next to her. When Miriam had received the devastating news of her daughter's death, she had been plunged into a deep depression. Tears streaming down her face, Miriam, who had lost her husband, now had to deal with the sudden loss of her daughter. As the detectives had worked to determine the cause of Wendy's death, Miriam had received a call from Wendy's husband, Michelle, asking for any updates on Wendy. Miriam had been speechless and had struggled to convey to Michelle that Wendy was no longer alive. A detective had intervened, taking over the call to inform Michelle that they would be visiting his home to discuss the matter in detail. Michelle had been completely stunned and unable to speak. The police had taken Michelle to the police station to gather more information. During a 14-hour interrogation, Michelle had recounted the events of the evening leading up to Wendy's tragic death. As they had left the hotel and driven home around 3 a.m., Michelle and Wendy had gotten into an argument over drinking. During the argument, Wendy had unexpectedly admitted to Michelle that she was not pregnant, which had added to the tension of the argument. As they had approached their apartment, Michelle had decided to go inside to give them both time to calm down, leaving Wendy in the car. That had been the last time he had seen Wendy. The autopsy report later revealed that Wendy had died from being repeatedly beaten with a blunt object, causing 15 to 20 severe injuries to her face and neck. Her face had been unrecognizable due to the injuries. There had also been signs of strangulation. Investigators had also found strange DNA on Wendy's dress. A physical examination had revealed that Wendy had had alcohol and sedatives in her system. Her estimated time of death had been between 3 and 5 a.m. on October 14th. Some strange points had also been discovered. Wendy had been found without shoes, but her feet had been clean. In addition, there had been no injuries to her hands and feet, suggesting that she might not have resisted during the attack, or that she might have been unconscious or restrained. The medical examiner had also confirmed that Wendy had not been pregnant at the time of her death, raising further questions about the reason behind her lie. Authorities had found a new lead. They had discovered that Michelle had made a phone call at 3:15 a.m. the day his wife had died. Detectives followed up on a crucial lead and discovered that Michelle's last call had been made to his ex-girlfriend, Yolanda. When informed of Wendy's death, Yolanda shared her love story with the police. She admitted to having had deep feelings for Michelle and was heartbroken by his sudden passing. Despite attempts to contact him, he remained unresponsive until the fall of 2002, when he returned her call. When questioned, Michelle admitted to having had an affair with another woman, but maintained that he had no feelings for Wendy. He said that he still loved Yolanda and hoped to reunite with her. Yolanda, who still loved Michelle, trusted him again and hoped that this would rekindle their romance. However, Michelle continued to live a double life. The investigation was hampered by the lack of solid evidence, including DNA, fingerprints, surveillance camera footage, or even a murder weapon. All they had were unsubstantiated statements. About 2 months after Wendy's death, Michelle re-emerged as a prime suspect in the case. After being caught planning to cash in Wendy's life insurance policy, questions were raised about the true motives of Michelle, who was the primary beneficiary of the policy. After this discovery, detectives suspected that Michelle had a strong financial motive, seeing as the insurance policy was worth $1 million. The investigation team continued to pursue this theory. On the other hand, an unexpected aspect of Michelle's personal history was revealed during the investigation. Michelle had previously been arrested and charged with armed robbery. He was also charged with unlawful possession of a firearm and possession of drugs. 3 years after Wendy's death, detectives decided to interview Yolanda again, suspecting that she had more information than she had previously disclosed. After Wendy's death, Michelle and Yolanda reunited and moved in together, but their life together was not a happy one. When Yolanda was brought in for questioning, law enforcement officers presented evidence that Yolanda had been the one who had funded Michelle and Wendy's vacation after they had married. The police forced Yolanda to reveal the truth by warning her of the consequences of lying. Yolanda gradually opened up to the police. According to her testimony, when Yolanda and Michelle resumed their relationship in the fall, Michelle told her that he had to marry Wendy because Wendy was pregnant. However, in reality, Michelle was indifferent to Wendy and planned to get rid of her to get the $1 million insurance money. Michelle and Yolanda's ultimate plan was to kill Wendy and take her huge insurance money. Yolanda was blinded by her love for Michelle and decided to go along with Michelle's plan. The only thing she cared about was that Michelle would reunite with her. According to the following testimony, after failing to get rid of Wendy during the holiday, Michelle decided to take drastic action. Michelle had laced Wendy's drink with a sedative in their hotel room. When Wendy began to fall asleep, Michelle took her outside and put her in the car. In the middle of the night, Michelle went to Yolanda's house and asked her to let him use her car. Michelle then went to a parking lot far from the residential area in Northwest Dade and asked Yolanda to stay in the car for a while. Yolanda then witnessed Michelle returning to her car with blood on his hands and a crowbar. They continued to Biscayne Bay, where Michelle removed the murder weapon and washed away the evidence of the crime. Yolanda then drove Michelle back to the residence she shared with Wendy, where Michelle disposed of his bloody clothes. However, Yolanda's testimony may have been unreliable. Yolanda may have been more directly involved in the murder of Michelle's wife. If Michelle had not used the crowbar to kill his wife, it was possible that Yolanda herself was responsible for the brutality and disfigurement of Wendy's body. Unfortunately, the truth of this case may have remained unknown due to Yolanda's immunity agreement that protected her from arrest or prosecution. This was used by Michelle's attorney to place the blame entirely on Yolanda in order to protect his client. However, after deliberating for just 2.5 hours, the jury convicted Michelle Escoto of first-degree murder and sentenced him to life in prison without parole. While Wendy's family finally felt that justice had been served after years of waiting, they were not entirely satisfied that Yolanda Cirillo would continue to walk free. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richins. Eric Richins was born on May 13, 1982, and left a lasting impact on those around him. As a child, Eric was passionate about sports, actively participating in basketball, baseball, and soccer, which showcased his athletic talent and enthusiasm for staying active. Eric's true passion, however, was anything that involved being outdoors. He was an exceptional hunter, known for his impressive marksmanship, and had amassed an impressive collection of trophy animals from around the world. With his vibrant personality, Eric had the ability to light up any room he entered, spreading joy and laughter through his storytelling, playful pranks, and contagious laughter. As an adventure seeker, Eric lived life to the fullest in Utah, where he owned a wide range of motorized vehicles, including trucks, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles. He loved exploring the outdoors and relishing the thrill of adventure. Despite his love for fun and adventure, Eric was deeply committed to his faith, being a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Eric's family supported him on a 2-year mission trip to Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, he attended the University of Utah, earning a degree in international studies with a minor in Spanish in 2009. While working in construction, Eric frequently visited Home Depot, where he met Curry Darden. Over time, they developed a friendly connection, and Eric found himself attracted to her charming personality and beauty. However, he was too shy to approach her directly, so Eric asked a friend to help him get her phone number. One day, while Eric was shopping at Home Depot, his friend discreetly asked Curry for her number, telling her that Eric was interested in getting to know her better. Eric anxiously waited to see if his plan would work. Eric took the next step and called Corey to set up their first in-person meeting, unaware that it would be a life-changing event. As soon as they met, they clicked, and their first date marked the start of a romantic journey. As they introduced each other to their families, their bond grew stronger. Corey's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was equally impressed by Corey's character and how well she fit with him. Although Eric's sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious, they soon warmed up to Corey and accepted her into their family. In 2013, Eric and Curry got married in an intimate ceremony, making their relationship official. After their wedding, Curry gave birth to their first child, Carter, followed by Ashton and then Weston, completing their ideal family. Eric naturally took to being a father, and his boys looked up to him. Eric took great pride in his sons' accomplishments, whether they excelled academically, athletically, or artistically. He consistently showed his support by attending their events and celebrating their successes. Later, Eric established a successful stonemasonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. Clients sought him out for his expertise in creating beautiful stonework. The business provided Eric and his family with financial security. Additionally, Corey, who worked in real estate, contributed to the family's income. Her entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with her knowledge of the local market, made her a valuable asset. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them for a profit. The Richins family enjoyed a wealthy lifestyle, symbolizing the epitome of success. However, their seemingly perfect life came to a sudden end on March 4, 2020, when Corey called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived, they determined that Eric had already passed away. Devastated, Corey called her mother Lisa, who rushed to be by her side. Corey's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, were present too, overcome with tears and shock. The three of them struggled to come to terms with Eric's passing. Corey recounted that the evening had begun on a happy note as they celebrated her latest real estate business milestone, the purchase of a luxurious mansion. Before retiring to bed, Corey had even prepared Eric's favorite drink, a Moscow Mule, mixing ginger beer with vodka. Corey went to bed around 9 p.m., but ended up sleeping in her 9-year-old son's room because he was having nightmares. Later, around 3 a.m., she returned to the bedroom she shared with Eric. When she touched him, she was alarmed to find him ice-cold and unresponsive. Despite trying to wake him, she couldn't rouse him and knew something was seriously wrong. As she waited for the paramedics to arrive, Corey remembered the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric, which she claimed to have followed. The paramedics were baffled by Eric's cause of death, speculating that it might have been an aneurysm, given his apparent good health and lack of known medical conditions. However, further investigation revealed that Eric had complained to Corey about chest pains the night before his death, which initially reinforced the aneurysm theory. But the autopsy results were shocking. Eric's cause of death was ultimately determined to be a lethal dose of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a highly potent pain medication that can be extremely dangerous and even deadly when taken in excessive amounts. After Eric's death, a critical question remained: how did this substance end up in his system? From the start, Corey and her family quickly blamed Eric's recreational drug use as the reason fentanyl was present. Corey explained that Eric would take a THC-infused gummy every night to relax, as he preferred THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, to unwind. However, Corey, her mother, and brothers had concerns about the origin of these gummies, suspecting that Eric didn't always buy them from trustworthy sources, and instead purchased them illegally. Eric's family strongly disagreed with these claims, believing there was more to the story, and urged investigators to explore other possibilities. Despite trying to move on, Corey faced significant challenges, according to her brother Ronnie, as the absence of their husband and father left a huge gap in their lives, leading their three sons to act out due to the uncertainty surrounding his death. Corey, grieving and seeking comfort for her children, turned to a creative outlet to cope with her emotions. She wrote and self-published a children's book on Amazon titled Are You With Me?, which aimed to help kids understand and deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a young boy struggling to come to terms with his father's death through illustrations and narrative. In the book, Corey portrayed Eric, her late husband, as a protective angel always watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, praised the book, saying it brought some comfort to Corey and her grandchildren as they navigated their emotions and rebuilt their lives. However, detectives investigating Eric's death soon uncovered evidence suggesting foul play. Just weeks after Curry appeared on local Utah news stations promoting her book and sharing her grief, she was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023. The community was stunned by the arrest, and the tragic turn of events transformed what was initially a heartwarming story of a grieving wife and mother into an unbelievable tale of betrayal and tragedy. Curry is accused of murdering Eric by poisoning him. Eric's family believes Curry deliberately put a lethal dose of fentanyl in the Moscow Mule she made for him on the night he died. However, Curry's lawyer claims that no fentanyl was found in the glasses at their home. Curry denies any involvement in Eric's death, saying she had no reason to harm him. Her mother, Lisa, was shocked to hear about her daughter's alleged involvement and told investigators that the couple was happy and had no reason to kill each other. But as detectives dug deeper, they found that Curry and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as they seemed. The couple had disagreements, and Curry, who had given up her career to be a stay-at-home mom, wanted to be independent. She was also growing increasingly frustrated with Eric's frequent hunting trips. According to Lisa, Eric was unfaithful in his marriage, and he confided in her about the affair along with Curry. To address their marital issues, Eric and Curry sought counseling. However, Eric's family denies that he ever cheated on her. Eric genuinely loved his sons and wanted to save the marriage. Despite his efforts, Eric was preparing for a potential divorce. He set up a secret trust with his sister Katie without revealing his intentions. The investigation uncovered that Eric had 6 life insurance policies worth $3 million. Furthermore, Curry forged Eric's signature on an additional $100,000 policy just 2 months before his death. It was also discovered that Curry allegedly stole money from Eric's personal accounts and misused business funds over several years. Contrary to her claims, Curry's house-flipping business was failing, according to Eric's family representative. Curry's company was deeply in debt, with millions of dollars owed. According to the spokesperson, Curry urgently needed cash, and a prenuptial agreement signed before the marriage stated that she would not inherit the business assets if they were to divorce. However, if Eric were to pass away before her during their marriage, the assets would transfer to Curry. The spokesperson's claims were disputed by Curry's attorney, who maintained that the business was not in financial trouble. The attorney explained that the debt was a normal part of the house-flipping business, as it relied on lines of credit that would be repaid once the properties were sold. Curry's attorney clarified that the large debt figure mentioned was simply a result of regular business transactions. Curry's mother, Lisa, recalled that Eric had been supportive of Curry's business ventures, particularly when they bought the mansion where they were celebrating on the night of his death. In Heber Valley, Utah, a 10-acre estate with a mansion sat vacant since its construction in 2017, despite being close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. This prime location offered endless opportunities for outdoor recreation. Curry, with the help of investors, bought the mansion with plans to renovate and transform it into a recreational hub. Her goal was to sell the property at a significant profit. After consulting an accountant, Curry and Eric discovered that they could potentially make a $12 million profit from the sale of the property, a substantial return on the initial $3 million investment. However, there's a discrepancy in Eric's involvement. While he seemed to be on board with the purchase, his family claims he was against it and had a heated argument with Curry about buying the mansion. Eric's family spokesperson claims that Curry gave Eric a drink containing fentanyl on the night of his death, and they believe this was not Curry's first attempt to harm Eric. They allege that in 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric became violently ill after Curry gave him a drink, but Curry's brother Ronnie denies this, saying Eric was mistakenly given an alcoholic drink by a bartender while taking antibiotics. Eric's family also claims that Curry tried to kill Eric again on Valentine's Day 2022, a month before his death, when she brought him a sandwich, that caused him to break out in hives and struggle to breathe. After Eric's death, Corey's behavior was questioned, including an incident where she allegedly attacked her sister Amy when she tried to open a safe containing a large amount of cash. Corey claimed she was defending herself to retrieve important documents, but was charged with assault and pleaded no contest in June 2023. Corey appeared in court for a 4-hour bail hearing, during which her attorney tried to convince the judge to release her on bail. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to argue that Corey had poisoned her husband. One of the witnesses, a cell phone expert, testified about Google searches found on Corey's phone, including queries about retrieving deleted iPhone messages, FBI's ability to find deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Corey's attorney countered that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Corey sought answers to the accusations against her. The prosecution also questioned the lead detective about potential sources Corey might have used to obtain the drugs that killed Eric. According to the detective, a woman named Carmen Labba, who claimed to work as a cleaner for Corey's business and home, told investigators about a meeting that took place in early 2022. During a call, Corey asked Carmen to buy fentanyl pills for an investor with a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation, agreed to the request. She later told detectives that she purchased 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and met with Corey to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day. Around the same time, court documents suggest Corey tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. Carmen also told detectives that Corey contacted her again, looking for even stronger drugs. She said Corey paid her with a check this time. Specifically, Carmen claimed that Corey wrote her a check for $1,300 about a week after Eric's death. However, Corey's attorney questioned whether the check could have been payment for cleaning services instead, and the detective acknowledged that this was possible. Corey's lawyer tried to discredit Carmen by pointing out her criminal history, including 4 first-degree felonies, and suggesting that she might not be a trustworthy witness. The lawyer claimed that Carmen may have been coerced into saying she sold drugs to avoid a long prison sentence, as the detective allegedly told her she would face serious consequences if she didn't cooperate. The lawyer also asked if there was any physical evidence to prove Carmen had bought drugs. The detective admitted that they found no text messages showing Corey asking Carmen for drugs, and no witnesses came forward to confirm they had seen the exchange. At the bail hearing, Eric's sister spoke to the judge, expressing her family's distress over Eric's death, and their fear that if Corey was released on bail, he would cause them further pain. Eric's sister asked the judge to keep Corey in custody, and the judge accepted her request. Meanwhile, Corey's family was upset because Corey was not allowed to leave jail before her trial and would have to stay there. They believed that Corey's time in jail was affecting her mental and physical health. In 2023, something serious happened to Corey while she was taking medicine given to her by the jail officials. She had a seizure and was quickly taken to the hospital from the jail. While Corey was in jail, she claimed that the officials gave her the wrong medication, which caused her to experience adverse effects. Fortunately, she recovered after being treated at a hospital. During her hospital stay, jail officials found a handwritten, unsent letter in her cell. They filed it into court records, claiming it was a note from Corey to her mother. Prosecutors argued that this letter provided additional evidence of Corey's intentions and motivations. In November 2023, they requested a no-contact order to restrict Corey's access to her mother and brothers, mainly due to the letter. Prosecutors claimed that the letter was evidence of witness tampering. According to prosecutors, the letter instructed Corey's mother on how her brother Ronnie should testify in court. Specifically, Corey allegedly wanted Ronnie to claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain pills containing fentanyl from Mexico during his trip abroad. The letter also instructed Ronnie to obtain text messages from Eric discussing his drug use. Curie stressed the need to link Eric's Mexico activities to his alleged drug involvement. Despite this, she vehemently denied accusations that a letter was an attempt to tamper with witnesses, claiming it was a work of fiction she wrote as a fantasy story. The judge ruled in her favor, as the prosecution failed to prove witness tampering. Currently, Corey and Eric's family are fighting for custody of their 3 sons, who are living with one of Eric's relatives. Although Corey is in jail, she still gets to see her sons through twice-weekly video calls. While her family has not been allowed private visits with the children, they regularly attend their sports events and practices, which are open to the public. If convicted of poisoning her husband Eric with fentanyl, Corey faces a sentence of 25 years to life. Multiple civil lawsuits have been filed against Corey, all related to Eric's estate. A central issue in these cases is the custody of Eric's children. Eric's family thinks that Corey's family is motivated by a desire to control Eric's assets, as whoever gets custody of the children will also gain control of his money. Corey's trial is scheduled to start in 2025. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of John Parker. John Parker was born in 1970, at least one sibling, and an Indiana, United States upbringing. Hailing from a middle-class family, he was an entrepreneurial youth with a passion for independence, self-improvement, and a drive to succeed. Unsurprisingly, after high school, he sought ways to earn a living. According to his brother, his first job was as a waiter's assistant in a restaurant, although his tenure was short-lived for unknown reasons. Undeterred, he soon found a new opportunity that offered greater autonomy and led him to discover his true calling, sales. John started his career as a door-to-door salesman for Kirby vacuum cleaners, a path that initially drew mockery from his family. However, in a remarkably short period, John proved his doubters wrong, discovering his true calling in life. By the end of his first year, he had risen to become the top-performing salesman in the area, and he made it clear that he had no intention of stopping there. Putting in long hours, often exceeding 12 to 16 hours a day, John became not only a sales leader whose accomplishments were regularly recognized at company meetings, but also a mentor and inspiration to his fellow salespeople, who drew new ideas and motivation from him. During this time, John met 20-year-old Judy, a young woman from a low-income family of 3 children in Texas, born in October 1969. Judy was outgoing and confident, and despite John not being actively seeking new salespeople, she persuaded him that she excelled in sales. Though young, Judy was far from shy. In fact, she had already been married at 14 with her parents' consent, was divorced, and had 2 children, Christina and Daniel Hicks, by the time she met John. Impressed, John gave Judy a chance and became her mentor in vacuum cleaner sales. Not only did Judy earn a spot in John's sales force, but she also captured her boss's heart, and they eventually started a romantic relationship. John's life was thriving. As a renowned salesman and trainer, he had earned an excellent reputation, and Judy's support in both his personal and professional life was invaluable. With this solid foundation, he decided to take the leap and start his own business in Michigan, becoming a sales and service operator for Kirby vacuum cleaners. In addition, he offered training sessions for salespeople, sharing his personal secrets and infectious enthusiasm that had contributed to his success in the industry. John's company soon became one of the top performers in the area, a feat he always attributed to Judy's unwavering support. In 1992, with his professional life firmly established, John and Judy got married. The following years were dedicated to demonstrating the potential achievements of a successful salesperson. They had 2 daughters, Tiffany and Erica, adding to their family of 4. As their fortunes grew, they relocated to better residences, and their children began to reap the benefits of John and Judy's hard work. John initially got along well with his wife's children, Christina was a sweet and innocent girl, while Daniel was hyperactive and a bit mischievous. The Parkers had a comfortable life, with excellent schools for the kids, luxurious cars, and frequent vacations. John was building a substantial fortune and wanted to inspire the young salespeople he trained by showing them what they could achieve through hard work. However, Christina's choice of friends was concerning, as she hung out with kids who had behavioral issues and even drank with them. There were also rumors that she used drugs. Meanwhile, 13-year-old Daniel was heading down a troubled path, often appearing angry and poorly supervised. One incident involved Daniel taking John's car without permission and driving recklessly around the neighborhood, damaging many mailbox posts. The next day, John visited the affected homeowners to pay for the damages and avoid having Daniel reported to the police. Around the same time, John was summoned to Daniel's school to address a complaint about his bad behavior. Unfortunately, the encounter ended with John physically disciplining the boy, which created tension in their relationship. After 9 years together, Judy decided it was time to introduce her family to the humble Texas town where she grew up, and to reconnect with one of her brothers, who still called it home. During their visit, Judy confided in her brother that her marriage was on the brink of collapse, and that John's behavior towards her children was a major concern. However, the reality was that Judy herself was failing to acknowledge her older children's wayward paths, instead siding with them, which only added fuel to the already volatile situation. John's situation went from bad to worse when he began to suspect that his wife was having an affair with one of his company's employees. As a man of action, John didn't let problems simmer. He addressed them head-on. To be certain of his suspicions, he installed cameras around the office and eventually gathered irrefutable evidence. This confirmation crushed John, and his friendly demeanor took a drastic turn for the worse. He started drinking excessively, which led to violent arguments with Judy and rough treatment of his children. One day, he brutally beat his daughter Tiffany with a belt after her teacher informed him that she had forgotten her homework. The teacher noticed the marks the next day and reported the incident to social services. Before they arrived, John warned the 4 kids that if they wanted to maintain their luxurious lifestyle, they needed to keep quiet about the beating. Tiffany ended up blaming her stepbrother Daniel, who didn't deny the accusations. John's bad mood didn't only affect his family, it also had a significant impact on his employees and the company's clients, who suffered from his outbursts of rage as a result of his wife's infidelity. In an attempt to separate his wife from her lover, John decided to relocate the family to an exclusive area in Crown Point, Indiana. Despite still loving Judy and hoping that by removing her from temptation, they could start anew, things didn't improve. Although Judy made an effort to improve her appearance by losing weight and changing her look, John, on the other hand, let his beard grow, started smoking, and his wardrobe became limited to jeans. His constant distraction led to the decline of the business, which almost went bankrupt, forcing him to sell his boat to stay afloat. Rumors spread throughout the office that Judy was having an affair with Jeff, John's right-hand man, although it was unclear whether the rumors were true or not. These rumors undoubtedly fueled more disagreements between they. At a certain point, Judy dropped a bombshell. She wanted a divorce, but John knew it wouldn't be that straightforward. He felt he had given Judy everything, rescuing her from poverty, embracing her children, lavishing her with luxuries, and loving her with an all-consuming passion. Now that same passion had curdled into bitter resentment. He retaliated by severing all her financial lifelines. He made it crystal clear, if she walked out, she'd leave with nothing. And he had the ultimate trump card, a recording of her illicit affair with a colleague. At the start of 2003, the strained relationship between John and Judy had taken its toll on their children, whose behavior continued to deteriorate. Tiffany's actions were particularly concerning, having recently been grounded for setting a fire on school grounds with a friend. The turning point came on Thursday, April 17, 2013, when John and Judy decided to have dinner alone at a restaurant, likely in an attempt to find a resolution to their marital issues, or, at the very least, ease the tension. After dining, they phoned home to check on the kids and informed them they would be back soon. Christina requested that they stop by her office to pick up a forgotten school notebook. On their way back, they made a detour to the office, and John took the opportunity to drop off the leftover dinner to Jeff, who was allegedly working late. They arrived at the office in a deserted industrial area just before 10 p.m. As John talked to Jeff inside, Judy retrieved her daughter's notebook and headed back to their car parked outside. Moments later, John emerged from the office and opened the rear door on the driver's side to search for something in the vehicle. Suddenly, two loud bangs echoed through the air, and John crumpled to the parking lot floor. Almost instantly, 911 operators received frantic calls from Judy and Jeff. Police and medical assistance units responded to the scene within minutes. Tragically, John, 33 years old, had been shot in the back of the head and was declared dead at the scene. When questioned, Judy, who was inside the car at the time of the incident, was unable to provide much insight. She stated that she had been sitting in the car when her husband emerged from the office, opened the back door on the driver's side, and immediately heard two shots. Judy recalled that upon hearing the gunfire, she instinctively hid, using the seat for cover, and when she finally looked up, she caught a glimpse of a dark-clad figure fleeing the scene. John's wallet was missing, leading investigators to initially suspect a robbery. However, as they delved deeper into the scene, doubts began to arise. Several questions troubled the investigators. Why would someone target this desolate industrial area at night, with no one around to witness the crime? If it were a robbery, why would the perpetrator take John's life first and then steal his wallet, when they could have easily taken the $20,000 gold Rolex he was wearing, as well as other accessible jewelry? And why didn't the thief search John's pockets, a common practice in such assaults? 2 bullet casings were recovered at the scene, corroborating Judy's account of hearing 2 explosions. One of the shots had killed John almost instantly, while the fate of the second remained unclear due to a lack of official information. With their minds racing with questions, the investigators launched their inquiry. And naturally, Judy was the first to be questioned. She revealed that her husband had a dispute with a company employee sometime prior and was able to identify the individual. However, beyond this, Judy was unable to provide any further insight beyond her initial statement at the scene. Jeff, likewise, proved unhelpful. He was inside the office and only emerged after hearing the shots, by which time everything was already over. Meanwhile, the authorities contacted the Parker residence, where Christina answered the call and was informed of her stepfather's passing. With the robbery motive all but dismissed, detectives shifted their focus to John's inner circle, starting with the disgruntled employee who had allegedly harbored resentment. The man acknowledged their intense argument, but claimed it had been amicably resolved, and his alibi checked out after a thorough investigation. The investigation subsequently cast a wide net, encompassing nearly everyone close to the young businessman: business partners, past and current employees, competitors, and even John's friends and family. The only somewhat suspect discovery was the interaction between the widow and the company's general manager, though it ultimately yielded no concrete evidence. Judy's demeanor at her husband's funeral was peculiar, to say the least. Observers noted that she seemed cheerful, chatting with friends and acquaintances, a stark contrast to the somber mood expected of her. Meanwhile, her ex-husband, father of their 2 children, appeared surprisingly at ease, casually reading a newspaper during the service. 4 days after John's murder, 15-year-old Daniel was questioned about his involvement. 6 months prior, Daniel had paid gang members to kill his stepfather, but they kept the money and didn't follow through. After John's murder, investigators looked into Daniel again. Daniel confessed to paying to hurt John, not kill him, but was released after 9 days due to lack of evidence. Later, it was revealed that John's issues with Judy's children had sparked a deeper investigation into Daniel, which led to suspicions about Judy's 17-year-old daughter, Christina. When questioned, Christina denied any involvement, and like before, the alleged plan was dismissed. Investigators became curious about the funding behind these schemes, suspecting Judy as the primary source, given that both teenagers had expressed a desire to eliminate John. Further inquiry revealed that Judy and John's relationship had significantly deteriorated prior to his death, with at least one of Judy's extramarital affairs coming to light. However, sources indicated that John was committed to salvaging the relationship and had no intention of leaving his wife. The primary motive behind Judy's alleged targeting of her husband seemed to be financial, with detectives discovering 2 life insurance policies totaling $1 million. Judy had attempted to claim this money following her husband's death, but the insurance company initially refused to pay out, citing the ongoing investigation into his death. The payment was further complicated by John's father, who harbored suspicions about Judy's involvement in his son's demise. Despite these leads, the case eventually stalled, with only circumstantial evidence available. However, significant changes occurred within the Parker family household. Judy was rarely home, preoccupied with her new partner, Jeff, John's trusted manager. In her absence, the older siblings took care of their younger half-sisters, Tiffany and Erica. Months later, Judy and Jeff decided to move out of state with Judy's younger daughters, while Daniel went to live with his biological father. Christina remained in the house, now pregnant and with a boyfriend. Although the case stalled, authorities stayed vigilant, revisiting files for a break. After a new lead, they questioned Christina and Daniel's schoolmates, who confessed to selling them a gun. This tip led detectives to Christina's family land, where they found bullet casings matching those from John's crime scene. In 2007, a narcotics officer, who had been investigating Christina's ex-boyfriend in a drug-related case, came forward with crucial information. The ex-boyfriend, seeking a more lenient sentence, revealed a conversation he had with Judy in which she implicated her son Daniel as the one who had fired the fatal shot that killed John. When confronted with this new evidence, 21-year-old Christina, whose connection to the murder weapon had already been established, quickly began to cooperate. She confessed to buying the weapon and calling her parents on the night of the incident, asking them to stop by the office under the guise of picking up forgotten homework. She also admitted to being involved in the plan to kill John, with her brother Daniel as the designated shooter. When 19-year-old Daniel was apprehended in Arizona, he was confronted with the new ballistics evidence and his sister's testimony. He promptly confessed to shooting John, but claimed that Judy, their mother, orchestrated the entire plot. Daniel revealed that Judy had fraudulently cashed company checks to raise the $7,500 needed to hire hitmen, but the initial plan failed when the hired individuals took the money without fulfilling their contract. Judy then allegedly instructed them to buy the weapon for Daniel to use. Moreover, Daniel claimed it was Judy's idea to fabricate the pretext for leaving the house that night by making the call about the homework. He admitted to shooting John once in the head, and the second shot was an accidental discharge while searching John's pocket for his wallet, as per his mother's instructions. He was also told to return home without arousing his younger sisters, a task made possible by Christina, who kept the girls occupied with television. The siblings alleged that their mother had coerced them into committing the crime by claiming they were victims of abuse at the hands of John, and promising them a better life filled with more money and freedom. It was also disclosed that this was not Judy's first attempt to kill her husband, as she had previously attempted to poison his food, resulting in only a brief hospitalization for John under the pretense of food poisoning. By the end of 2007, Christina and Daniel were formally charged with murder and conspiracy. Christina entered a not guilty plea for the conspiracy charge and was released on bail several months later in March 2008. Daniel, then 20 years old, pleaded guilty to a conspiracy charge for involvement in his stepfather's murder and agreed to cooperate, implicating his mother in the crime. In exchange, prosecutors agreed not to pursue the more serious charge of murder, although Daniel still faced a sentence of 20 to 25 years in prison. According to Daniel, nearly a year prior to the incident, when he was just 14, his mother and sister first approached him to participate in John's murder. He claimed that his mother provided him and his sister with money to purchase a handgun, along with black clothing, gloves, and a mask for the day of the crime. She also allegedly gave him explicit instructions on how to carry out the task, including taking a thorough shower upon returning home to eliminate any traces of gunpowder residue. Ultimately, Judy took it upon herself to dispose of the weapon, the clothes worn during the crime, and her husband's wallet. In July 2009, 6 years after her husband's death, Judy faced the inevitable and surrendered to the authorities, agreeing to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. By doing so, she acknowledged her role in planning, executing, and covering up the crime. The prosecution requested a life sentence with a minimum of 28 years and a maximum of 35 years. Nearing 40, Judy was sentenced to 33 years in prison in late August 2009. The following month, Daniel received a 23-year sentence, and in early October, Christina, who pleaded guilty to aiding a criminal, was sentenced to 5 years. Press reports indicate that Daniel was released in 2017 after participating in a community transition court program and subsequently lived a low-profile life. Christina served 4 years of her sentence and was released in 2013, but tragically died from a drug overdose shortly after her release. This case is defined by unrelenting greed. Judy's difficult early life and subsequent success only fueled her insatiable desire for more, driving her to commit appalling crimes. Tragically, her actions not only ruined a thriving entrepreneur, but also had a profound impact on her 4 children, resulting in 2 being imprisoned and leaving the younger ones once again without their father and mother. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The heartbreaking case of Heather Elvis. Heather Rell Elvis was born on June 30th, 1993, in Horry County, South Carolina, to Terry and Debbie Elvis. She was described as a determined, vibrant, and free-spirited individual with a big personality. Heather enjoyed doing makeup and aspired to pursue it as a career. She was a talented, cheerful, and seemingly happy 20-year-old girl. Heather was very artistic and often shared her thoughts and interests on social media. She was known to be somewhat rebellious, living her life the way she wanted, without caring much about what others thought of her. After graduating from St. James High School in Murrells Inlet in 2011, and eager to experience her independence, her parents allowed her to move into an apartment in Myrtle Beach with her best friend Brianna. To support herself while studying cosmetology, Heather had 2 part-time jobs, one at the House of Blues in North Myrtle Beach, and the other at a Scottish-themed restaurant called the Tilted Kilt in Myrtle Beach. She had a good job, great friends, and a tight-knit family, and everything in her life seemed to be on track. However, like every 20-year-old girl, she had secrets and things that her family did not know about, and would not find out about until it was too late. One day in the summer of 2013, Heather was working her regular shift at the Tilted Kilt when an older man caught her eye. This man was Sidney Mora, the restaurant's maintenance worker. Sidney was a 37-year-old married man with 3 children. His wife Tammy was a 40-year-old stay-at-home mother and a part-time travel agent whom he had been married to since 1997. Sidney owned his own maintenance company and would come to the restaurant to repair things in the kitchen. It was no secret that Heather had a crush on Sidney, even though he was much older, and the two of them would engage in harmless flirting at work. Heather would tell her friend Brianna about their interactions and how smitten she was with this man. Heather, who was also very active on her social media accounts, was open about expressing her feelings towards Sydney. It became clear that Sydney was also attracted to Heather, and the two began a romantic relationship. Sydney would often bring Heather coffee and bagels when she was at work, even on his days off. They would text each other frequently, and the relationship soon became physical. Heather was deeply in love with Sydney. She told her sister how much they loved each other and how they envisioned a future together. Throughout the affair, Heather was aware that Sydney had a wife. However, Sydney had told her that he was in an open marriage and was no longer in love with Tammy. He even claimed that Tammy had a boyfriend of her own, and they were only living together for financial reasons and for the sake of the kids. Being young and naive, Heather believed every word. Her friends didn't approve of their relationship because Sydney was 17 years older than Heather, and on top of that, he was a married man. He had been married for 15 years to his wife, 40-year-old Tammy. The affair was not a secret at Heather's workplace, and she would often be teased by her colleagues. One of the girls also phoned the restaurant posing as Tammy, looking for Heather. Heather panicked and left work straight away, thinking that Tammy was going to show up. The affair lasted until September 2013, when Heather tweeted, "Once upon a time an angel and a devil fell in love. It did not end well," referring to her relationship with Sydney. Tammy found out about the affair, though it's unclear how she discovered it. People close to Heather said that once Tammy became aware of the affair, it was chaotic. Soon after discovering her husband's affair with the young waitress, Tammy called Heather and demanded that she end the relationship. Tammy then put Sydney on the phone, and he proceeded to tell Heather that she meant nothing to him, that it was over, and that she was just someone who spread their legs, among other insults that greatly undermined Heather's confidence and self-worth. Over the next few weeks, she tried to focus on rebuilding herself and directing her sights on her goals and work. Tammy, however, was only just getting started. Tammy forced Sydney to get her name tattooed above his crotch. She would also handcuff him to the bed at night so that he could not sneak out. Over the next few weeks, Tammy continued to send nasty texts to Heather, and she even once called Heather 40 times in a single day. Heather believed that taunting Tammy was the best way to deal with the situation, saying things like, "Why are you texting me? You should be worried about your husband." Tammy would take it a step further and send Heather pictures of both Tammy and Sydney in bed together, getting intimate. It was also reported that Sydney texted Heather again, saying that Tammy wasn't entitled to feel the way she did about the affair and act the way she did because she too had a lover, but this turned out to be a lie. They both agreed to call it quits because nothing good was coming from it. Heather, on the other hand, told Sydney that she wanted Tammy to stop calling the restaurant because she lost hours of work and was sent home because Tammy kept calling. Heather and Sydney last saw each other on November 5th after they agreed to end their relationship. Heartbroken, but remaining determined to move on from the situation, Heather continued to work on herself, with those close to her commenting on how she had got her smile back. Things also started to look up for Heather when she was offered a job in a beauty salon, and she was one step closer to her dream job. As for the texts and calls from Tammy, Heather began to get used to them and continued to ignore them, thinking that Tammy would eventually get bored and move on. On November 19th, Sydney and Tammy decided to buy a brand new black Ford F-150 and drive to California with their children to visit Disneyland as a way to rekindle their romance, whereby the trip lasted 3 weeks. Meanwhile, despite Heather's life taking a turn for the better, it would not be long before those around her began to notice that she was gaining weight. So much so that she had to be given a new uniform at work, as her usual one no longer fit. Heather went from having a size A cup size on her bra to a size C cup, and she also went from a medium-sized skirt to a large. These are all changes that are typically associated with someone being pregnant. Finally, Heather took a test at work one day, and it came back invalid. It is not known for certain whether or not Heather was pregnant, but it was considered a very strong possibility given the changes in her physical appearance and the fact that she was known to be having a very intimate relationship with Sydney Moore. Her confidence was coming back, and she organized a date with a guy who was closer to her age that she'd been talking to for quite a while. Things were looking good for Heather. On December 17, 2013, Heather went out on a date with Stephen Chaldy. They didn't have a specific plan, but wanted to spend some time getting to know each other better. They went out to eat, and then drove around looking at Christmas lights, which Heather loved doing during the holidays. Stephen then took Heather to Inlet Mall and taught her how to drive his stick-shift truck. He even took a picture of her trying to drive his car. Heather sent this picture to her best friend, Brianna, and her dad, Terry, who she lived with. The date started at 10 p.m. and ended around 1 a.m. when Stephen dropped Heather off at her apartment. They made plans to meet again the next day for a second date. Regrettably, this marked the last time Heather Elvis was seen. Shortly after returning to her apartment, she received an unexpected call from Sydney Moore, with whom she hadn't been in touch for weeks. During the 4-minute conversation from a payphone, Sydney apologized to Heather, professed his love for her, and revealed that he had left Tammy to be with her. At 1:44 a.m., Heather called her roommate, Brianna, who was away visiting relatives, in a distressed state. She informed Brianna about Sydney's confession of love. Sydney initially denied this call until evidence from CCTV footage proved otherwise. Brianna advised Heather to carefully consider the situation and not jeopardize the progress she had made. Heather mentioned she would reflect on it, do some online research, and then try to sleep, although she found it difficult to rest that night. At 2:29 a.m., Heather attempted to contact the number Sydney had called multiple times before, but no one answered. At 3:16 a.m., Heather tried calling Sydney's cell phone, once again with no response. Heather persisted and dialed Sydney's cell phone again, managing to connect this time. The conversation lasted just over 4 minutes, though its content remains unknown. Following the call, Heather drove to Peachtree Boat Landing, a location merely 3 miles away from Sydney and Tammy's residence. Sydney initially denied this call, only admitting to it when presented with Heather's phone records by the police. He claimed to have spoken to her, directing her to cease contacting him. Heather reached Peachtree Boat Landing at 3:38 a.m. and attempted to contact Sydney several times, but received no response. 2 CCTV cameras recorded a vehicle resembling Sydney and Tammy's, moving from their residence towards Peachtree Boat Landing the next evening. Heather's green Dodge Intrepid was discovered parked at Peachtree Landing on the Waccamaw River by a local officer. The authorities questioned Heather's father, Terry, as the vehicle was registered under his name. Upon inspecting the car, they noticed that Heather's keys, ID, purse, and phone were missing. Terry was permitted to take the car back home. Despite Terry's repeated attempts to reach Heather, his calls went unanswered. When the police visited Heather's apartment, she was not present, and she did not report to work. The search for the missing Heather Elvis had commenced. Sydney and Tammy were suspected of involvement in Heather's case based on texts, phone calls, and public statements. They were arrested on February 21, 2014, for kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and indecent exposure. After spending 11 months in prison, they were released in 2015 on a $100,000 bond each. The murder charges were dismissed in March 2016, and the kidnapping charges were pending. The indecent exposure charges were dropped on June 20, 2016. Sydney's trial for the kidnapping of Heather Elvis began. It was revealed in court that Heather may have been pregnant. Detectives found out that Sydney bought a pregnancy test and cigars at Walmart. Later, Sydney called Heather from a payphone and arranged to meet her. Sydney claimed the pregnancy test was for Tammy, as they were trying for a baby. However, security footage showed them cleaning their car, burning rags, and having a receipt for a pregnancy test. The kidnapping charge against Sydney ended in a mistrial because the jury couldn't agree on a verdict. There was no evidence linking Sydney to Heather's murder. In August 2017, Sydney faced trial once more, this time for obstructing justice. He was convicted and given a 10-year prison sentence. Additionally, the prosecution intended to retry Sydney for kidnapping at a later date. In October 2018, Tammy was put on trial for kidnapping and conspiracy, 5 years after Heather's disappearance. It was revealed during the trial that Tammy was angry about her husband's affair with Heather, especially when rumors suggested that Heather might have been pregnant in December 2013. A family friend, Donald DeMarino, testified that he saw an image of Heather on Tammy's phone at a family gathering after Heather disappeared. According to Donald, Heather in the image did not seem able to move or speak, causing him distress and leading him to leave the event. Although the image was not shown in court and few details were provided, the prosecution's evidence, including this testimony, convinced the jury to find Tammy guilty in less than 2 hours. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison for both charges, with the possibility of parole after a set period. To this day, they have not revealed what occurred to Heather Elvis on that night in December 2013. Both have been attempting to challenge their convictions for years, claiming their innocence, but without success. Currently, Sydney, aged 47, is imprisoned at the high-security Leigh Correctional Institution in Bishopville, with an expected release date of March 31, 2044. Tammy, aged 50, is at the medium-security Leigh Correctional Institution in Greenwood, with an anticipated release date of May 9, 2043. Heather Elvis has never been found, and a tribute garden has been set up at Peachtree Boat Landing in dedication to her. Heather's disappearance left a void in the lives of her family and friends, and their pain, unanswered questions, and desire for closure became part of the story of Myrtle Beach. The community came together in search efforts and vigils, united by hope for answers. Heather's story touched hearts beyond the coastal town, highlighting the challenges of love and relationships. As we honor Heather Elise Elvis, let her memory remind us of life's fragility and the need for compassion and understanding. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Penny McAllister. Penny McAllister, the eldest daughter of Desmond, a teacher and soldier, grew up in Germany, immersed in the arts, music, theater, and school drama. She was a bright, charming young woman. At 16, Penny met Duncan McAllister in the officers' mess bar in Germany. Born in 1961, Duncan had attended UK boarding school and, like his father, joined the army, training in signals. He'd been engaged to a UK woman, but ended it before being posted to Germany, where he met Penny. Dazzled by Penny's beauty, Duncan was rude at first, but later adored her. A few months on, he plucked up the nerve to visit, and they became an item. They fell fast, spending all the time they could together. In '83, Duncan was reassigned to the UK, and before departing, he asked Penny to marry him. They wed the next year, when she was 18, and he was 23. The couple relocated to Wiltshire, with Duncan enrolling at the Royal Military College, while Penny pursued her studies. Their newlywed years were blissful, marked by shared adventures, travel, and a mutual passion for diving learned on vacation. Eventually, Duncan received a posting to Northern Ireland at the height of the Troubles. Penny accompanied him, which was an unusual step, as most British Army wives stayed in the UK due to the dangerous and volatile situation. They settled in County Armagh, the smallest county in Northern Ireland, home to Lough Neagh, the largest freshwater lake in the UK and Ireland. In February 1990, Duncan and Penny decided to set up an army diving club to expand their social circle. Duncan was the more confident diver, providing instruction, while Penny handled the administrative work. One of the members who joined to learn diving was a young woman named Susan Christie, a petite soldier and member of the Ulster Defence Regiment, UDR. Susan was the daughter of a non-commissioned officer in the UDR, and it was said that she had her father wrapped around her little finger. She was very driven and planned to follow in her father's footsteps, joining the UDR just before her 21st birthday. She was initially part-time but excelled as she was a perfectionist, which suited army life. She was an attention seeker who flirted skillfully to captivate men, but never went too far. Yet, she'd pout and act like a brat if denied that spotlight. This behavior only intensified when she joined the diving team. Susan flirted with Duncan, a married man, and they began a physical affair. Though Duncan claimed it was just a fling and he loved his wife Penny, their relationship escalated, with Duncan taking Susan's virginity and them meeting for sex in secret. Penny suspected Susan and Duncan's behavior, though she lacked proof. Trusting her intuition, she watched them closely, hoping the situation would resolve itself. However, Penny's optimism would prove misguided, but Susan's behavior around Duncan, particularly in the diving circle, became unpredictable. Susan was jealous of Penny as she treated her horribly. She was rude and would ignore Penny, even if she was to even just say hello. It wasn't enough for Susan to have Duncan in the palm of her hand. She would also try and make Duncan jealous if they all went to the pub after a dive, and she wasn't sitting next to him. She would flirt with the other soldiers around them. Duncan would describe it as leading them on, and if any of them tried for a kiss or anything more, Susan would run back to him crying, saying she was being harassed. Susan, rightly so, began to get a reputation for throwing accusations around. She also began to fake illness when she wasn't getting the attention she wanted, and was treated in hospital a few times when there was nothing wrong with her. In September 1990, a serious incident occurred. Duncan and Susan dived with the club near the wrecked SS Triple, which had sunk in 1917 off County Antrim after hitting a mine. It was a deeper dive than usual. The wreck lay 30 meters down. Duncan, the cautious leader, had all stopped mid-ascent for 2 minutes to avoid decompression sickness. When they surfaced, he warned that anyone feeling unwell should contact him or a supervisor. Everyone, including Susan, said they were fine. The next morning, Duncan received a call that Susan was, to no one's surprise, unwell. She had joint pains, a symptom of the bends, so Duncan took her to a specialist. Though she could walk to the car and into the clinic, when left in the waiting room, she dramatically collapsed and needed a nurse's attention. The doctor confirmed her symptoms matched surfacing too quickly, but found it curious that Duncan, her diving partner, showed no signs. Despite 2 compression chamber runs, Susan continued feeling unwell, concerning the doctor. The week before, during a training course, and perhaps the pain she was experiencing was from that. Both the doctor and Duncan were furious that their time and energy had been wasted on what was probably a false alarm. But they weren't the only ones. Once pissed off, Penny had been left at home for hours while her husband was attending to the woman she suspected he was having an affair with. Penny was so fed up that she actually called her mother. She didn't tell her mother in so many words what was going on, but her mother would understand how hard it was to live on an army base, as she had done it with her own husband, and she would be clever enough to read between the lines. Next to a woman's intuition, a mother's intuition is like having a superpower. This was the only second time Penny had opened up about her worries. Last summer, she went to Germany to see a friend and told them about her concerns over Duncan and Susan. She also confided the loss of her pregnancy, but kept it from Duncan due to their relationship troubles. That weekend, Duncan had Susan over while Penny visited her friend in Germany, their first time being together overnight. Susan soon professed her love for Duncan, but he refused to return the sentiment. He brushed her off, confessing he felt unable to express his love due to his loyalty to his wife. He had no issue betraying his wife by getting intimate with Susan, but drawing the line at declaring his love as that would be too much of a betrayal. The diving club arranged a trip to Ascension Island in October 1990, and at first there was a problem with Penny's flight, which elated Susan. But then Duncan intervened, getting Penny on a flight. This infuriated Susan, who was very hostile towards Penny, who was just trying to ensure a smooth trip. Penny organized the equipment and cooked for everyone, but Susan, in one of her moods, refused to eat Penny's food or help her. Duncan soon realized that Susan wasn't just in love with him, but obsessed. He was stuck dividing his time between the two women. Even though he was a knight with Susan, he still managed to slip away with her a few times throughout the trip. Duncan pulled Susan on her behavior towards Penny. And while he was concerned for Penny over Susan's behavior, he was even more concerned when they actually seemed to be getting on. They would sit together, have long conversations, and get on towards the end of the trip. After the trip, Duncan decided he would have to end the affair with Susan. It was clear by this stage that Susan was dangerous, and if she got close to Penny, she could tell her of the affair and his marriage would be over, and it also put a risk to his career. Duncan told Susan the affair was over, but she was having none of it. She cried and then totally ignored the fact that it was over. On the 2nd of 1990, Susan told Duncan she thought she was pregnant. Upset, he panicked, couldn't understand how this happened. Susan said she was sick on their Ascension Island trip, but didn't say anything, not wanting to be stopped from diving. When discussing options, Duncan made his views clear, but said it was Susan's decision and he'd support her. The first option was termination. She could have the baby, but he'd be uninvolved financially. Or she could have the baby, name him as the father, but he'd lose his job. Termination was the only option for Susan. She didn't want to raise the baby alone, and she wanted to keep her career. A while later, Susan told Duncan she was pregnant, but the doctor said it'd be best to wait before arranging an abortion. Abortion was illegal up to 2020, so she'd have had to travel. A month later, Susan announced she'd lost the baby. Convenient, as she never went to the hospital or took time off work. Duncan stayed in touch that week after Susan lost the baby, trying to console her over the loss. However, Susan later contacted Duncan after meeting up with Penny for lunch. She was very angry with Duncan because she had told Penny about the miscarriage and claimed that she too had lost a baby, fully aware of what Susan was going through. Susan was furious and called Duncan to find out why he had not told her this himself. Of course, he could not have, as Penny had not informed him, and he had not even known she was pregnant. He was devastated that Penny had not confided in him, and he also realized that he could not ask Penny about it. Susan had to go to the UK for a work course in 1991. This helped end her affair with Duncan, as he was also posted to Germany. But they still continued seeing each other, much to Penny's annoyance, until Susan made a scene trying to get Duncan to go out with her. The weekend before Susan was to go to the UK, Penny went to Dublin with some army wives. Duncan and Susan would spend that same weekend together, and it would be the last time they would have together, so they made the most of it. They went diving together, went for walks, and, of course, had a bit of housework. Susan was upset that things were finally coming to an end, but told Duncan she was happy they'd remain friends. However, people that gullible think they can stay friends after an affair. After the weekend was over and Penny returned home, Duncan was surprised to receive a call from Susan. He thought that their weekend together clearly signaled that they were over. Obviously, Duncan didn't understand the staying friends bit was Susan's way of holding on. She continued to call Duncan at work and even made plans to meet Penny for a walk and lunch before she left for the UK on Tuesday, the 26th of March 1991. Duncan received a call from Susan. She asked what could have happened if he wasn't married. This was a risky question with a perilous answer that could lead to dire consequences. Duncan said it was pointless to consider, as things are as they are. He noted they'd face other challenges, as she's a soldier and he's an officer, and their relationship was prohibited in the army, even if she was commissioned, as she was stationed in Northern Ireland while he couldn't be there long term. Susan agreed and was upset by the truths he shared before ending the call. The following day, Wednesday the 27th of March, Penny dropped Duncan to work and headed into town, as she had to drop some stuff off at the Army Run shop, and then later go to meet Susan for their walk with the dogs and lunch out. This morning will be the last time Duncan would see his beautiful wife alive. Penny also had to prepare for a visit from her parents, and was busy at home getting things ready. Penny told Duncan she was not looking forward to her lunch days with Susan, as she had rescheduled twice already, and she was really too busy that day to meet with her, but she decided to go anyway. Later that morning, Duncan received a call from Susan asking if he knew where Penny was. She tried ringing the house, but no one answered. She couldn't remember if they were supposed to meet at 11 a.m. or 11:30 a.m. Duncan, exasperated by the call, told Susan to go to the meeting place at 11 and wait there for Penny, then ended the call. Duncan headed out of the office that afternoon, known for a fitness test which was a 3-mile run. As he returned to the office, he met with his commanding officer, who was not looking too pleased. Duncan thought he was coming to tell him that he was not going to be going to Germany, but instead, he had graver news. He sat Duncan down and told him that Penny was dead. At first, Duncan could not take in the information. His commanding officer continued to tell him about the circumstances of Penny's death. It became more real. Penny was out for a walk in John Carra Forest and collapsed with her dogs and was attacked. He was told that there was another woman with her and she was injured and brought to the hospital. Duncan knew straight away who this woman was, but that didn't concern him straight away. He knew Penny's parents were to arrive in a few hours, and he would have to break this devastating news to them, and also had the ordeal of telling his own parents. The police secured the area where Penny's body was found, and they took witness statements from a family who had been having a picnic nearby. When Susan emerged from the forest, crying, screaming, and bloodied, she was unable to stand properly, and her hands were covered in blood. Her clothes were ripped, and she had scratches on her face and a stab wound to her torso. The woman of the family went to help Susan, and her husband went to call the police. Susan, meanwhile, begged for someone to find Penny. After she explained that they were both attacked by a man, and she had managed to escape, but that Penny was still in the forest, the police arrived and went into the forest. A local doctor treated Susan for her injuries. They followed the trail and soon found Penny lying on the forest floor, covered in blood, and her throat had been cut. This is where she bled out and died. Susan was brought to the hospital and treated for her scratches and stab wound, then sent home. That night, Duncan rang her to see how she was and to ask her what happened. All she kept saying was sorry, and that she tried to help but couldn't. He agreed to go see her after seeing Penny. Susan offered to go with him and was very insistent, but Duncan said it was something he had to do on his own. The following day, he visited Susan at her home, and she again tearfully kept apologizing to him for not saving Penny. Duncan, as usual, believes since crocodile tears and told her it wasn't her fault. Susan told him what happened. Penny and Susan met up as planned. They went for a walk in the forest on a lovely day. Susan stopped to tie her shoelaces, while Penny went ahead with the dogs. Penny's dog started barking furiously, and Susan saw a man standing over Penny on the ground. Penny was bleeding, and the man had a knife. The man then attacked Susan, pulling her, knocking her down, and trying to take her clothes. Susan kneed him and then went to Penny's aid. Susan couldn't stop Penny's bleeding, and the man had fled the scene, so she ran to the car park. The attacker was of average height, had brown hair, blue eyes, and was wearing a green jacket, blue jeans, and white sneakers. The police visited Susan's house and requested her to go to the forest where she and Penny were attacked. The police suspected Susan was withholding information, and they were right. Susan and Duncan did not disclose their affair to the police, as they agreed it was irrelevant to Penny's case. They agreed to keep quiet about the affair if the police found out. The police questioned Susan extensively at the station throughout the day. She complained that the officer was not courteous, but Duncan said that's how they gather evidence. Susan felt she was mistreated and that the police were against her. She told Duncan they would speak to a friend who knew about their affair, which worried him. Duncan tells Susan that the police are searching for a white car and a description of the perpetrator. This is a relief for Susan, since she is not the only one who saw the man she described. Overnight, Duncan thought he should approach the police and tell them about the affair. He also felt it would save time, and they would focus solely on finding who killed Penny. Duncan wasted no time in contacting the police, providing them with a comprehensive account. The authorities had little need for further questioning, merely inquiring about his familiarity with Drumcarra Forest and Susan's recent visit. Duncan denied knowledge of the former, but acknowledged the latter, requesting discretion regarding the Army's involvement, which the police stated was not feasible. He was instructed to return to Northern Ireland following Penny's funeral in England. When he arrived in England, his father picked him up at the airport, and he told him about the affair on the eve of Penny's funeral. He knew that Susan had been arrested for Penny's murder. Now he had to tell Penny's family about the affair. He called Penny's parents and told them everything. They were kind during the funeral the next day, even letting Duncan sit next to them. There are better people out there than some, and I see that with the families of victims, especially the parents. Meanwhile, Susan was being questioned and she had stuck to her story throughout. The police told her that Duncan had confessed to their affair, and Susan began to deflect and change her story. Suddenly, she had memory loss and could no longer remember what happened that day in the forest. The police were watching Susan's behavior throughout and noticed that she seemed to like the attention she was getting during the interviews. She ate everything that was put in front of her. She tried to befriend the female officer that was assigned to the case. This was not the typical behavior of someone who had witnessed the brutal murder of their friend and then implicated in us. When questioned, Duncan was asked about his relationship with Susan and whether he and Penny had an open marriage. Police also asked if Penny didn't help Susan in an accident during a dive, and if Duncan forced Susan to terminate a pregnancy. Susan claimed that Penny had provoked her that day, causing her distress and a blackout, after which Penny was found dead. Police believed that Susan was withholding the full truth, possibly to cover for Duncan. They also questioned why Duncan had conspired with Susan to cover up the affair unless he had something to do with it. Why had he spent 2 days with this supposed ex-lover following the news of his wife's death? Duncan flatly denied everything, and his statement was prepared, and he was released. Susan was kept in custody, where she quickly adjusted to prison life. Her father visited her, and so did friends, but she never admitted to anyone what she did on June 1st, 1992. Susan appeared at Downpatrick Court and pleaded not guilty to murder, but guilty to manslaughter. The Crown's opening statement was damning. They said Susan had lured her lover's wife to a secluded spot and then brutally murdered her. It was a case of premeditated murder. Then she tried to cover up the murder by inventing an attacker and injuring herself. Forensic scientist Joseph Corr testified he visited the crime scene, believed Penny was attacked from behind, grabbed by coat and hair on left side, with one earring pulled off. Penny's neck was slashed, causing immediate unconsciousness. Police found a recently sharpened boning knife 260 yards away, which Corr believed was the murder weapon. Susan's blue jacket had Penny's blood type, but not Susan's. The doctor that attended Susan at the scene that day was next to take the stand. He described Susan curled up on the floor of the car park near the forest. He patched up the small wound on her leg and the scratches across her stomach. Her underwear was slightly ripped and blood-stained, and when Silverton removed her gloves that she was wearing on the rather mild day, which didn't warrant the need for gloves, her hands were covered in blood. But there were no injuries when he did a follow-up on Susan a few days later. He summarized that her injuries were self-inflicted. The state pathologist then took to the stand, and he described the horrific injuries to Penny and agreed with the forensic scientist that Penny would have lost consciousness straight away and would have been dead within a few minutes. As the horrific injuries were being described, Susan could be heard sobbing. A doctor was called, and it was determined that Susan was not medically fit to continue the trial. When the trial resumed, Duncan took the witness stand and had to recount all the details of his affair with Susan. The defense exploited Duncan's demeanor, accusing him of being cold and indifferent towards Susan and ignoring the emotional toll the affair had on her in order to continue it to satisfy his own sexual needs. He acted callously, telling her he loved her, but in a different way than he loved his wife. As Duncan was being cross-examined by the defense, Susan sat there weeping. Next time, Susan testified for 3 days. She talked about her relationship with Duncan, hoping that he would leave his wife for her, though that wasn't her initial intention. She admitted that she liked being the center of attention, but denied faking illness or injury to maintain that role. She also denied lying about her pregnancy and miscarriage, and that Duncan had told her she was right to want to have an abortion. Susan grew close to Penny on Ascension Island as fellow divers. Susan admitted to being jealous of Penny, who sometimes felt the same. Penny confronted Duncan about their affair, but never mentioned it to Susan. I doubt this. If Penny hadn't told Duncan about her miscarriage, she didn't confront him about the affair. Penny was classy and knew Duncan would never leave her for someone like Susan. On the day of the murder, Susan claimed she felt unwell and tried canceling the meet with Penny, who had already left. They met, drove to the forest, and Susan couldn't recall the attack, claiming memory loss. She denied buying and sharpening the knife, but later admitted lying to the police, realizing she must have been the attacker. A psychiatrist assessed Susan, concluding she had depression and stress reaction at the time. Another psychiatrist found her reaction normal, with only mild depression, not a mental illness, and that she fabricated memory loss. The trial took a break for the weekend, and when it resumed the following Monday, Lord Justice Kelly provided his instructions and summary to the jury. He asked them, is it more likely than not that Susan Christie was suffering from mental abnormalities when she planned, premeditated, and executed her plan to kill Penny? That is the sole focus of this case. After 4 hours of deliberation and being informed that a majority verdict would be accepted, the 8 men and 4 women of the jury reached their verdict. She was found guilty of manslaughter and cleared of the murder of Penny. Before pronouncing sentence, Lord Justice Kelly explained to the court the factors that would influence his decision. He acknowledged the gravity of the offense and the devastating impact of Penny's death on her loved ones. However, he also had to consider the personal circumstances that drove Susan to commit the crime. He pointed out that Susan was a young woman with no prior criminal history and no experience of physical relationships. The judge stressed that her affair with Duncan had triggered the events that led to Penny's death, and he was confident that Susan was unlikely to repeat such a heinous act. In the end, the judge sentenced Susan to a mere 5 years in prison for the heinous crime of slitting Penny's throat. It's shocking that such a lenient sentence was handed down. Upon hearing the verdict, Penny's mother was overcome with grief, crying out and shaking with emotion. In contrast, Susan showed no immediate reaction to the news. The public was outraged by the leniency of the sentence, and rightly so. Regardless of the circumstances that led Susan to kill Penny, it's clear that Penny was the true victim. The judge's consideration of Susan's age was irrelevant in this case. After all, Penny was only 24 years old when her life was brutally cut short. Where was the judge's consideration for her youth? This injustice is infuriating. The Attorney General's office referred the case to the Court of Appeal to review Susan's sentence. In 1994, a 3-judge panel examined the case and ruled that Susan didn't have depression, as she was never treated for it and didn't miss work. They found she planned the killing and tried to cover it up. her sentence was increased to 9 years. Susan was released from prison in October 1995 after serving just short of 5 years, including time served on remand. While preparing for release, she worked outside the prison. One of her colleagues described her as a man-hungry schemer, and a businessman that had worked with her since she fully left prison described her as the most manipulative person you were ever likely to meet. I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. Duncan never visited her in prison, and she was dishonorably discharged from the army. It is said that she changed her name and disappeared. When Ronald Vinci, a millionaire, first encountered Catherine Pileggi, a flight attendant, he felt an immediate sense of love. Little did he know their chance meeting in the skies would ultimately shape their future. Born on August 16, 1940, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Ronald Vinci displayed an entrepreneurial spirit from an early age. In his 20s, he started his first business venture by renting a space on the Pacific Coast in San Diego to sell Honda motorcycles. Over time, his small shop grew into one of California's largest Honda dealerships. Ron's success didn't stop there. He opened several more car dealerships, steadily increasing his earnings. Those who worked for Vinci often described him as resolute and strong-willed, as well as a demanding employer. Ronald Vinci's personal life included a previous marriage to Pamela. Together they had a son named Carrie. However, their marriage ended in divorce after several years. Following his divorce, Ron indulged in a lavish lifestyle and spent his wealth on extravagant toys. He developed a passion for collecting airplanes and helicopters, even acquiring a large hangar to house his collection. Ronald resided in a spacious house located in Rancho Santa Fe, California. He went to great lengths to obtain permission from the county commission to construct a helicopter pad on his property, despite objections from neighbors. This allowed him to commute conveniently by helicopter directly from home. Additionally, helicopter pads were installed on the roofs of his car dealerships to further facilitate aerial transportation. In 1990, the paths of 50-year-old Ronald Vinci and 34-year-old Catherine Pileggi crossed unexpectedly in the skies. Catherine was working as a flight attendant when they first met. Catherine Pileggi hailed from a close-knit family and grew up in rural Georgia. During her youth, she participated in beauty pageants and won hearts with her charm and grace. With charisma and a radiant smile, her beauty and pleasant demeanor attracted many admirers and suitors. After finishing her education, Catherine spent several years working as a lab technician in a veterans hospital. However, her aspirations were beyond this job, and she always yearned for more in life. In 1980, Catherine made a significant career change by leaving the hospital and joining Delta Airlines as a flight attendant. At that time, her annual income was $20,000. She enjoyed her new job, tending to passengers' needs and serving meals. Catherine even had some practical knowledge, like using coffee grounds to eliminate unpleasant odors, a handy tip for dealing with spills on airplane seats. In 1990, a decade after starting her flight attendant career, Catherine had a fateful encounter on a flight. She met Ronald Vinci, a millionaire, who was immediately drawn to her charming and ever-smiling personality. Despite the significant 14-year age gap between them, the two began a romantic relationship. Catherine then left her career as a flight attendant and moved into Ronald's luxurious home in California. They shared a passion for travel, often visiting Aspen, Colorado, a favorite getaway spot for them. Their relationship spanned 10 years, during which Ronald never proposed to Catherine. Eventually, they chose to part ways. Seeking a fresh start and new companionship, Catherine relocated to Florida in April 2001 at the age of 45. She began a relationship with 63-year-old Dilio Carano, an insurance agent who was financially well off. The couple met through mutual friends. Catherine confided in Dilio about her previous relationship with Ronald Vinci, describing it as tumultuous and unhappy. She revealed that during the decade-long relationship with Ronald, she endured insults from him and had to deal with his heavy drinking and public discussions of his affairs with other women. All while hoping for a marriage proposal that never came from Ronald Vinci. On the contrary, wasted no time and swiftly proposed to Catherine. The couple tied the knot in May 2001, just a month after they first met. Catherine seemed very happy with the marriage. After their wedding, they began living together in Miami Beach, Florida. Dilio described Catherine's early demeanor in their shared life as resembling that of a domestic cat, gentle, calm, and quiet, with minimal eating habits. Furthermore, Catherine had a profound fear of water. She couldn't bathe in the ocean or river without experiencing intense anxiety upon entering the water. A few months into their marriage, Dilio began to notice a significant change in his wife's behavior. She increasingly requested money from him, demanding funds for clothes and gifts, while comparing him to her friends' more generous husbands. Dilio estimated that Catherine was withdrawing approximately $55,000 monthly from him. She used educational expenses as an excuse, but failed to provide receipts or evidence of such expenditures. After several months of enduring this financial strain, Dilio decided he had rushed into the marriage and wanted a divorce. Given their lack of children or shared property, the separation was relatively straightforward. Court documents revealed that Dilio Carano had a net worth of $4.5 million, whereas Catherine had only $8,000 in her accounts. As Catherine prepared to move out of Dilio's house, she expressed sadness and despair, lamenting, "What's the point of living? I don't succeed in anything. There's just no meaning in my life." In 2005, Ronald Vinci, a millionaire, made a significant life change by relocating to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Convinced by friends that Florida offered favorable climate conditions and low taxes, at this point, Ron had already sold his car dealerships and accumulated substantial wealth. In Fort Lauderdale, he acquired a luxurious apartment on the 4th floor, enjoying his new residence's comforts. In the same year, Ronald rekindled his relationship with Catherine Pileggi. Catherine, the flight attendant Ron had previously dated, moved into his apartment, rekindling their relationship. Interestingly, Catherine's ex-husband, Dilio Carano, also lived in the same building, but was situated 30 floors below them. Dilio couldn't comprehend why Catherine chose to reconnect with the millionaire she once described as a monster. As their relationship progressed, Catherine became increasingly fixated on marrying Ron. Both Ronald and Catherine were no longer working and led a leisurely lifestyle. Their differences became more evident over time. Ronald was overweight and enjoyed indulging in rich foods. In contrast, Catherine maintained a weight of only 42 kilograms by eating sparingly. Ronald loved lively parties, while Catherine preferred staying home absorbed in crime stories. She rarely wore dresses, opting for shorts and sneakers instead. The couple often traveled together, crossing the sea by boat and visiting Caribbean islands by air. Despite her fear of the ocean, detailed in her diary entries, Ron incessantly encouraged her to conquer her phobia. Even though Ronald possessed considerable wealth, he had a penchant for frequenting budget-friendly bars along the Fort Lauderdale waterfront with friends. There, he would order 1 tacos and strong drinks. He might have been the life of these gatherings, flirting with women, but he often humorously remarked that his appeal to men had long vanished. Their home frequently hosted gatherings where Ronald indulged in alcohol and grew more outspoken. Occasionally, he publicly insulted Catherine in front of their friends, implying she owed everything to him. At these events, Catherine usually played a passive role, quietly catering to Ronald's intoxicated demands, serving drinks and snacks and attending to his friends' needs. This dynamic painted a clearer picture of their contrasting personalities and relationship intricacies, Ron's extroverted indulgence versus Catherine's introverted submissiveness. For 5 years, this pattern persisted. However, the millionaire remained hesitant to propose marriage to Catherine. By 2010, Ronald began confiding in friends about his desire to end the e-killing and seek a younger companion. In early 2011, Ronald Vinci found himself hospitalized due to severe intestinal issues. These issues were most likely stemming from years of alcohol abuse. The doctors attributed his illness to alcohol consumption, but Vinci noted a recent shift in the taste of his food. A friend jokingly suggested that maybe Catherine had tried to poison him. Ronald dismissed this jest without much thought. In reality, Ronald had neglected his health. His excessive alcohol intake and the habit of consuming numerous pills for relaxation and better sleep were taking a toll on his well-being. In June 2011, Ronald Vinci made a significant purchase, acquiring a new waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale valued at $3 million. Conveniently located just steps away from where his yacht was docked, the property promised comfort. At the age of 70, Ronald looked forward to spending the rest of his life in this residence. He eagerly anticipated visits from his only son, Carrie, and his grandson. Carrie's occupation as a waiter was a subject of jest for Ronald, who humorously claimed that Carrie was eagerly anticipating his father's passing. On the afternoon of June 28, 2011, the gardener of Ronald Vinci made a distressing call to 911, reporting an incident involving his employer. When the police arrived at the scene, they discovered the lifeless body of the millionaire in a guest bedroom. Shockingly, his body had been meticulously wrapped in plastic bags, tightly taped, and placed inside a sleeping bag along with soiled sheets. And on top of it all was a substance resembling wet dirt, later identified as coffee grounds. Further examination revealed a slashed mattress beneath the blanket on the bed. The gardener informed the police that according to Catherine Pileggi, Ronald had fallen down the stairs, suffered a head injury, and subsequently passed away. The officers had deep suspicions that Ronald Vinci's death was not accidental. During police interrogation, the gardener provided a chilling account of the events leading up to the discovery of Vinci's lifeless body. According to his testimony, Catherine Pileggi had called him late at night, urgently requesting his presence at Vinci's residence. Upon his arrival in the morning, he was confronted with the sight of the millionaire's body wrapped tightly in a sleeping bag in one of the guest bedrooms. Catherine, distressed and tearful, implored the gardener to assist her in burying Ron. She revealed that Vinci had expressed a lifelong wish to be laid to rest in the ocean after his demise. To carry out this plan, she had purchased a blue container intended to hold Vinci's body, with the intention of taking it out to sea using the millionaire's yacht. By the time the gardener alerted authorities, Catherine had already brought this container home and placed it in the garage. Upon conducting a thorough examination, the medical examiner made gruesome findings. Ronald Vinci, aged 70, had sustained 9 stab wounds to his chest and neck. He bore marks consistent with hammer blows on his head and had ultimately met his demise from a gunshot wound to the head. On June 27th evening, Ronald Vinci's friends visited his house. Catherine prepared the meal and Ron provided drinks during their gathering. During dinner, Ron mentioned that his passport and one of his pistols were missing. He also complained that the food tasted unusually bitter. Unexpectedly, Ron, who was known for staying up late, said he wasn't feeling well and went to bed as early as 7:30 p.m., an unusual time for him. His friends eventually found this early bedtime odd and left his house afterward. Catherine Pileggi, aged 54, was brought in for questioning a few hours later, where she provided a detailed confession. She recounted events around 1 a.m., shedding light on what transpired that fateful night. On June 28th, a drunk Ronald Vinci woke up and began verbally insulting Catherine. The situation escalated as he chased her down the stairs, stumbled and fell, hitting his head severely. Catherine claimed she helped him up and guided him to a guest bedroom on the first floor. Afterward, she cleaned the bloodstains on the stairs. A few hours later, she entered the guest bedroom to check on Ron, finding him asleep with a loaded gun on the nightstand. Fearing that Vinci intended to kill her, Catherine acted out of fear and desperation. She grabbed the gun and fatally shot him in the head. During interrogation, Catherine admitted she was very scared and angrier than she had ever been before, feeling like her soul had left her body. After the shooting, she inflicted numerous additional wounds on Ron using a knife and a hammer. Catherine then wrapped his body in a bag and attempted to conceal the evidence by calling the gardener when she realized she couldn't dispose of the body alone. Surveillance camera photos showed Catherine purchasing a large blue container at a hardware store after the murder. This container was intended to be used for disposing of Ronald's body in the ocean. Authorities discovered a gun matching the one used to shoot Ronald in Catherine's car with her fingerprints on it. Her Bentley also contained incriminating items such as a knife, cut-up pieces of a mattress, clothing, and rubber gloves, all stained with Ronald's blood. Consequently, Catherine faced a charge of first-degree murder and was subsequently arrested and detained. Further investigations revealed that just a month before the murder in May, Catherine had been involved in a legal dispute wherein her sister accused her of borrowing money but refusing to repay it. Catherine defended herself by claiming that the money was a gift and therefore refused to return it to her sister. On May 17th, the court ruled in favor of Catherine in this dispute. Ronald's neighbors reported hearing screams from Vinci's house on the night of the crime. Additionally, a witness spotted a white car with a large trailer near Vinci's home early in the morning. This car belonged to the gardener. Ronald Vinci's friends disclosed that he had been contemplating ending his relationship with Catherine for quite some time. The couple had not been intimate for several months and even slept in separate rooms within their large house. Just a few weeks before the tragedy, attempted to give Catherine $1 million through one of his workers, requesting her to leave his house permanently. Prosecutors believed that Catherine's primary motive was the fear of losing her wealthy partner. However, Catherine's defense argued that she had been a victim of severe abuse during her relationship with Ronald and acted in self-defense. Questions arose regarding why she did not immediately contact the police, why she did not tell the truth right away, and why she endured the alleged abuse for years without leaving him. Some of Catherine's relatives defended her in court, and a court psychiatrist identified some signs of domestic violence. Nonetheless, none of Ronald's close associates could confirm witnessing any mistreatment in their relationship. They described Catherine as calm and noted that she never complained about her life. During the court proceedings, Catherine made a startling accusation against Ronald Vinci, claiming he was responsible for the sudden death of her younger sister Angela 3 years prior, in December 2009. Catherine, Ronald, and Angela had embarked on a Caribbean cruise together. Angela had been struggling with substance abuse issues and consumed excessive alcohol during a party on the cruise, leading to severe illness and intense convulsions. In an effort to help her sister, Catherine performed artificial respiration. Tragically, Angela's heart stopped beating, resulting in her death. It later emerged that Ronald had provided Angela with some pills on the evening of the cruise, presumably to help her relax. Catherine firmly believed these pills were a contributing factor in her younger sister's death. In 2014, a jury found Catherine PGI guilty of the murder of Ronald Vinci. Consequently, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. She is currently serving her sentence at the LEL Correctional Institution in Marin County, Florida. Her potential release date is set for January 2034, when she will be 77 years old. The story of successful and wealthy Ronald Vinci took a tragic turn due to his ill-fated relationship with quiet and unassuming flight attendant Catherine PGI. Despite his many wise decisions in life, this particular relationship ultimately proved to be a fatal error for the millionaire. The case of Lisa Cecilia Hardum, the fiancée of a tyrant who turned a luxury apartment into a prison. Controlling behavior in couple relationships, unfortunately, is not uncommon and quite dangerous. It manifests itself when a person tries to subjugate and forcibly adapt their other half to their own needs through intimidation, demonstrations of strength and power, as well as humiliation and total control. Often the victim, because of the instilled feelings of fear and guilt, does not realize that he or she is in a destructive situation. The story of a young woman named Lisa Cecilia Hardum illustrates what a relationship with a control freak can lead to. She naively believed that she had met the love of her life, but she herself did not notice how her fiancé became a monster who turned their luxurious apartment into a real prison with 24-hour video surveillance. This case provoked an international scandal and was widely covered in the press. The unfortunate Lisa tried to make Lisa look mentally unstable and cold-blooded crime to pass off as an accident or voluntary resignation from life. However, the perpetrator, despite his money and connections, did not manage to escape responsibility. Now let's understand how her beloved man turned into a monster who hid his inhuman attitude behind care. Lisa Cecilia Hardam, biography, family, early years. Our today's heroine was born in Canada on June 12, 1981, in the suburbs of Toronto, and was the second child in the family. Lisa was brought up together with her older brother Jason, with whom she has always been very close. They were raised independently by single mom Joanna. Brother and sister did not remember their father because he left the family when the children were very young and no longer took any part in their lives. Lisa Cecilia grew up as an active and purposeful girl. From an early age, she was involved in sports. Together with her brother, went to the martial arts section, liked to play soccer and volleyball. But her main passion has always been ballet. She daily visited the dance studio where she practiced at the bar for several hours. The girl from childhood was tall and slender, but professional ballet classes required the strictest diet, which had a detrimental effect on the growing body. In adolescence, Lisa developed anorexia on the background of eating disorders. For a long time, she kept silent about her problem, believing that she could cope with everything herself. But when her weight approached critically low values, her mother sounded the alarm and put her daughter in the clinic, where Lisa needed to spend several months to restore health and weight gain. After graduating from school, the girl continued dancing classes and also decided to connect her life with the beauty industry. In parallel with her university studies, she got a job as a perfumer in one of the stores of a large cosmetics chain, and in her spare time, she studied the subtleties of makeup and hairdressing, moving to Australia. In 2005, having celebrated her 24th birthday, Lisa decided to make drastic changes in her life. She wanted to go to the other side of the world, to Australia, and there were several reasons for that. Firstly, she wanted to live in a warmer and milder climate. And secondly, Lisa wanted to see the world. She took a one-year work visa and traveled to another continent. However, with her then flew Joanna, who accompanied her daughter for the first few months to make sure that she was all right, and she settled well in the new place. The mother then returned back to Toronto with peace of mind, making sure her daughter could take care of herself. Lisa settled in Sydney, where she rented a cozy apartment and soon got a job at a local small cosmetology company. After her visa expired, she decided to move to Australia permanently. First, she extended her stay for another year, and then began to prepare the necessary documents to obtain citizenship of this country. Personal life. As for personal life, in this respect, everything was not easy. The fact is that Lisa always preferred to meet with older men. Obviously, not the least role in this played a lack of a father in the family, so she always reached out to more mature men, looking for support and protection in them. In 2006, Lisa successfully interviewed for a job at Sydney Cosmetics and was hired. She soon began in a romantic relationship with a co-worker who was almost twice her age. A few months later, they decided to start living together, and Lisa moved into the apartment of her lover. And after a couple more months, the girl introduced her boyfriend to her mom and brother, and they approved her choice. The couple traveled a lot around the world, rested in the Seychelles in Paris, and also visited the famous carnival in Rio de Janeiro. The man even made Lisa a marriage proposal, which she gladly accepted. But about a year after the engagement, the lovers broke up. Lisa did not go into detail about the reasons for this decision, but hinted that too great a difference in age, however, played in this not the least role. In 2010, Lisa graduated from the Sydney College of Stylists and got a job as a hairdresser in a popular beauty salon, where she quickly won the respect of colleagues and the trust of customers. At the same time, a new boyfriend appeared in her life, but their romance did not last long because Lisa found out that he was married. Destroy someone else's family she was not going to, so she quickly broke off the relationship. But shortly before that, at one of the parties, this guy introduced her friend. a businessman named Simon Gitney. This acquaintance turned out to be fatal for Lisa. Who is Simon Gitney? Simon was born in Maryland in December 1973 in a very religious, large family of immigrants from Lebanon. He had 5 other siblings, whom his parents raised in strictness and obedience. However, Simon from a young age had problems with controlling emotions and outbursts of anger, and he was also possessive, did not tolerate rejection, and often gave the will of his fists. All this eventually led to serious problems with the law. The first time Gitney was behind bars was at the age of 18, when he came to his ex-girlfriend in the store where she worked and began to openly molest her. The store owner interceded for the girl and threw the impudent man out the door, but Simon returned with friends who grabbed the store owner and held him, while Simon beat him severely. That time the guy only served a few months and was released on bail for good behavior afterwards. But 3 years later, he was arrested again, this time on theft charges. However, Simon resisted violently, threw himself into a fight, and bit off one of the policeman's earlobe. He was threatened with a serious prison sentence for this prank, but the pastor of the Lebanese Christian church, of which his entire family was members, interceded. As a result, the young man spent only a year and a half in prison. In 2000, Simon again came to the attention of the police, and this time he was arrested for possession and distribution of illegal substances. But the sentence was again extremely lenient, and he served 2 years out of the 4 assigned to him. On release, Gitney, as it seemed to everyone, took the path of correction. He moved to Sydney, where with a few friends founded a fairly successful business for the production and sale of luxury women's shoes. This business brought a stable high income, so Simon quickly became rich, acquired luxury real estate in a prestigious neighborhood, a premium class car, and carefully tried to hide from everyone his rich criminal past. From his roommates to his lovers. At that party, Simon and Lisa exchanged phone numbers, and soon he called her himself. Their relaxed communication somehow imperceptibly grew into a buddy relationship, and when in January 2010 Lisa complained that she was unhappy with her current living conditions and would like to rent an apartment in another neighborhood, Gitney kindly offered her to live for free in one of the rooms of his luxurious apartment while she was looking for a suitable place to rent. Lisa accepted the offer, although her mother was somewhat alarmed by this turn of events. But Lisa convinced Joanna that it was a temporary measure and that she and Simon are just friends. By the way, she herself at that time thought that the man who so carefully monitors his appearance and adores piercings preferred to build relationships with guys. But this opinion turned out to be wrong. For the first couple of months, Gitney really kept his distance. The young people lived in separate rooms, and there was not even a hint of intimacy or romance between them. But gradually they got closer, the so-called spark, and started a romance which quickly gained momentum. At the time of the beginning of their relationship, Simon was 37 years old, and Lisa, 28. Simon seemed to her a beautiful prince from a fairy tale. He was sociable, cheerful, spoiled his beloved with gifts, and arranged her pleasant surprises. The couple began to appear everywhere together. In particular, they went together to an elite sports club, which Simon attended regularly for many years. Lisa was sure that finally met her true love and will live a long, happy life with the chosen one. She raved about him to her mother, brother, and friends, and had no idea that this fairy tale would soon end. An affectionate tyrant. Just 6 months after the beginning of the relationship, Simon's behavior began to change, but it happened in stages and in such a way that Lisa did not notice anything, thinking that the lover does everything for her own good. He gradually distanced Lisa from friends and family, erased all her personal boundaries, tried to change her views, tastes, and behavior, adjusting them to his needs. In June 2010, shortly after Lisa celebrated her 29th birthday, Simon began to persistently persuade her to quit her job, claiming that she was not valued there and she could find a better paid position. But Lisa loved working at the beauty salon, where she had many regular clients and was happy with her income, so she didn't understand why she should quit her job and refuse to do so. Simon was not satisfied with the refusal, and in August of the same year, he showed up at Lisa's salon, having thrown a loud scandal, which actually forced her to write a letter of resignation. Lisa Hardam was shocked by his behavior, but Gitani assured that it would be better, and in general, she can no longer work, because his income will allow them both to live comfortably, nothing to deny themselves. A month and a half later, the couple moved into a new luxury apartment, located on the 15th floor of an elite residential complex. As it later turned out, the room was literally stuffed with hidden surveillance cameras, of which Lisa, of course, did not even guess. Simon gave his beloved an expensive smartphone and laptop, pre-installed on them spyware that allowed him to track all her messages, emails, as well as listen to calls and see all of Lisa's movements. In addition, Simon gained access to her social media accounts and began to discreetly clean lists of friends, delete posts and photos at his discretion, as well as read personal correspondence. Total control. Gitani's control over Lisa increased day by day, but as an experienced manipulator, he made it look as if his girlfriend wanted to do as he told her. Gitani had invaded literally every aspect of her life, leaving no hint of privacy. He forbade Lisa to use cosmetics, claiming that she does too bright makeup, which makes her look vulgar. He also bought her clothes in unsightly clothes in gray and black colors, and all her outfits simply threw away, arguing that they were too revealing, and men would stare at her. From the apartment, Lisa went out only accompanied by her lover. They visited together only those places that he himself chose. Simon even forbade her to visit the gym. Instead, he bought several expensive exercise machines, saying that now she could train at home. Lisa's social media friend lists were dwindling by the day, and eventually Gitani convinced her to delete the accounts. Lisa also had no friends left in real life, and all her contacts and calls were closely monitored. Simon only allowed her to communicate with her mother and brother. Last trip home. In December 2010, Lisa decided to fly to Canada to celebrate Christmas with her family. Simon was going to fly with her, but at the last moment his plans were disrupted because of urgent business matters. He didn't plan to let his friend go alone, but she literally begged him, because she hadn't seen her mom and brother for over a year. In the end, he agreed, but set strict conditions and rules, which she had to strictly follow. Jason and Joanna were shocked at the changes that had happened to Lisa over the past year. She was nothing like the bright and cheerful beauty she had been before. She had literally become her own shadow. There was not a drop of makeup on her face. Her luxurious hair was pulled into a ponytail and hidden under a headdress. Her clothes were baggy, unattractive, and completely black. But it wasn't even the outward changes that were the most frightening. Lisa flinched every time the phone rang and instantly grabbed the receiver. It was one of Simon's conditions. She had to answer immediately, at any time of day, no matter what she was doing at that moment. Lisa stayed at her mother's house all the time, refused to see her friends, and hardly ever went out. Joanna was alarmed and frightened by this behavior of her daughter, and she decided to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. Then Lisa burst into tears and admitted that Simon always knows where she is, with whom she communicates, and what she talks about on the phone. Lisa also revealed that Simon doesn't allow her to work, see her friends, go to the gym, or have any hobbies. In fact, she had no friends left at all. Her mother was shocked. She began to persuade her daughter to stay in Canada, because in Australia she has nothing to keep her. But Lisa said that she loved Simon and did not want to break off the relationship with him. Lisa was sure that this is just a transitional period in their relationship, because they have been together for less than a year, and soon he will calm down and loosen his grip. She also added that her lover cares about her and wishes her only good. Despite pleas from her family to stay and attempts to convince Lisa that the relationship was unhealthy, she decided to move back to Australia to stay with Gitani. Lisa reassured her mother, saying that there was nothing to worry about and that Simon loved her and would not hurt her. Prisoner. After Lisa returned, the situation only got worse. Simon forbade her to leave the apartment, and if they went out together, she had to look only at her feet so as not to meet the eyes of other men. Moreover, Simon began to call Lisa by her second name, Cecilia, because it seemed more decent to him. In the spring of 2011, Lisa began to complain of pain in her leg. It was an old injury received in his youth during ballet classes. But instead of taking her to the hospital, Gitani hired a female physical therapist who came to their home 3 times a week to give her massages. She soon became Lisa's only friend and confidant, to whom Lisa spoke candidly about the difficult situation she found herself in. On June 12th, for Lisa's 30th birthday, Simon decided to throw a party at the most expensive restaurant in Sydney, but among the guests were only Simon's relatives and people from his inner circle. Lisa, on her own birthday, boyfriend did not allow to invite anyone. At the end of the evening, Simon proposed to Lisa by putting a ring on her finger. Hardem responded with consent and then cried, but all present noticed that these were not tears of joy, but rather tears of despair and hopelessness. Back home, Lisa called her mother and informed her of her engagement, sobbing into the phone. But Joanna was not at all happy about it. She began to persuade her daughter to leave this man and, as soon as possible, to return home to Canada. In response, Lisa only asked her mother never to start such conversations on the phone. At that moment, she already realized that the fiancé was listening to the calls, although she did not know for sure. Escape plan. For a while, Lisa tried to distract herself with thoughts of the upcoming wedding and began planning the festivities. When she decided to consult with Simon about something related to the event, he rudely cut her off and told her that he would choose the place, buy her address, and make the guest list. Lisa was utterly crushed, for she had no say even here. During another visit to the physiotherapist, Lisa admitted that she couldn't go on like this, but she couldn't leave because her fiancé wouldn't let her go. Together, they developed a plan according to which Lisa, at each visit of the masseuse, gave her some of her belongings for safekeeping, but did everything so that Simon did not notice anything. On July 28th, Simon left his laptop at home in a hurry, which he usually carried with him everywhere. Lisa took advantage of this and looked into it, and her worst fears were realized. There she found a spyware program, with the help of which the fiancé received all the data from her phone, as well as numerous recordings of her conversations with her mother. But the most horrifying discovery was the surveillance footage from the security cameras located in every room of their apartment. That same day, Lisa, using her physical therapist's phone, called her mother and asked her to come on the next flight to her apartment and take her home. However, Joanna could not leave work so quickly. She needed time to ask for an excuse to switch shifts with one of her colleagues. Afterwards, the woman could never forgive herself for this delay. Back home, Simon immediately realized that his fiancée had taken his laptop and seen the spyware. Lisa cried, trying to figure out why she deserved to be treated that way, but Simon only pointed out that he'd done it for her own good. Accident or murder? The next day, July 29th, a serious conversation took place between the young people, the recording of which was later presented in court. Lisa was in tears and asked to go home, but Gitani calmly and confidently said that this would never happen, asked Lisa to calm down, and claimed that she had mental problems. On the morning of July 30th, 2011, Lisa got up early, got fully dressed, and put her documents and essentials in her purse. She locked herself in the bathroom and called her mother one last time, telling her that if anything happened to her, it would be Simon's fault. Apparently, Lisa wanted to leave the apartment unnoticed while her fiancé slept, but she failed. What happened next can only be guessed. According to neighbors, they heard a scream in the hallway, but did not have time to react because all abruptly hushed. And exactly a minute later, a young woman fell from the balcony of the 15th floor, crashing to her death. Several passers-by on the street also heard the scream and saw a body falling from a height, but did not have time to realize what was happening. According to a guy who was walking his dog that morning and was closest to the scene, he heard a noise and looked up. The eyewitness saw a man holding something large, which he then threw down. When passers-by came to the place of the fall, they saw a young woman lying on the ground, but all attempts to help her were in vain, as she died instantly, having received extensive injuries. 3 minutes later, Gitani, dressed in his pajamas, ran out into the street. He was crying, saying he didn't know how he was going to live his life, and claiming that he hadn't caught his fiancée in time. At first glance, it looked like an accident, but Simon himself was quick to claim that his fiancée had voluntarily passed away. A note in his pocket and a frightening video. Strange things began as soon as the body was taken to the morgue and examined. In different pockets were found fragments of a note torn into small pieces with the text, "There are cameras everywhere in the apartment." Probably Lisa was afraid that Simon might find the message, so she turned the note into a kind of garbage and scattered it in different pockets. A check showed that there were indeed a lot of cameras in the apartment, but the hard disk with recordings could not be found. And Simon claimed that there was no video recording at all. A surveillance camera in the communal hallway, on the other hand, captured something frightening. The short clip shows Lisa running out of the apartment and calling for help, but her fiancé grabs her from behind, covers her mouth, and drags her back in. This happened a minute before she fell off the balcony, and it was this scream that the neighbors heard. And Gitani's laptop was found to contain a recording of a conversation he and Lisa had the night before the tragedy, as well as spyware that Simon used to spy on his fiancée. According to Simon, he and Lisa had an argument that morning, and she became hysterical. She ran out into the hallway screaming, but he brought her back because he didn't want to put on a show for the neighbors. In the apartment, he picked up the phone to call her mother, but Lisa ran out to the balcony at that moment and threw herself down, and he ran after her but did not catch her in time. He claimed that she had threatened to take her own life before, but he didn't take her words seriously. But Gitani attributed the spy program to his concern for his fiancée's safety. Trial and sentencing. In the course of the trial, Simon was accompanied by already a new pasta, 22-year-old model Rachel Louise, who was just incredibly similar to his dead fiancée. However, later it was said that the girl just wanted to become famous at the expense of this high-profile case, and therefore willingly talked to the press and appeared on television, saying that Gitani would never raise his hand on a woman. Simon's lawyers tried to convince the court that Lisa suffered from a mental disorder, was prone to hysterics, and could have voluntarily passed away. Even a long history of anorexia and treatment in a clinic came up. The defense also argued that the defendant, being short in stature, simply could not physically lift Lisa, who was taller than him, and also could not throw her off the balcony. But this version was refuted by a trainer from the gym, which Simon had attended regularly for many years. According to the trainer, the defendant worked with heavy weights, was much stronger than he appeared outwardly, and could easily have lifted Lisa. This was also supported by the absence of Lisa's fingerprints on the railing and the glass barrier, as she could not have jumped without leaning on them. Also testifying in court was the physiotherapist to whom Lisa had told in detail everything that had happened to her and had given her her belongings in the hope of escaping from the tyrant. It was her testimony that was decisive. Gitani was found guilty of murdering his fiancée and sentenced to 26 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. After the verdict was announced, Rachel Louise threw a tantrum and began to insult the judge, for which she was removed from the room. All attempts by Simon and his lawyers to challenge the court's decision were rejected, and the verdict remained in force. Rachel soon dumped her boyfriend, saying in an interview that it was difficult for them to maintain a relationship in prison, but she remains convinced of his innocence.